3, 2. Hello, and welcome to GRAPPL Spotlight. I'm Benno.
And I'm JP.
Just the two of us this week, JP. Just left Matty in the pre-show. We were catching up about our day out in Wigan yesterday. Just polling our patrons on what potential Dave Bautista films we might do for GRAPPL Film Club this week. All busy stuff. You can get over to patreon.com/grapple. But yeah, how do I find you here on this Monday night, mate?
I've had a lovely weekend, but a mad weekend. My sister's been over, the one who lives in the States. She's been over visiting loads of families. I've got to spend some time with her as well this weekend, which was really lush. So and then cramming in an absolutely ridiculous amount of wrestling today. But I think
I did explain to her when you needed to escape to record a podcast. Oh no, that was Saturday, wasn't it? You were she wasn't there.
That was fine. And then again, just to stress, when a 9-year-old asked me for a screwdriver, I did not give him said screwdriver. I sorted out the batteries myself once I'd finished recording. That was the much sane and sensible thing to do. You're only asking. So yeah, you'll notice you'll hear some of the sights and sounds.
Such as the bonus audio you get at patreon.com/grapple. I was gonna say I'm fucking knackered. Like this weekend, was out all day drinking with Matt and that yesterday, which you'll hear a bit more about later when it comes to the Grand Pro show as we went round some of my old haunts, like legitimate ones this time, not just the ones you make up on the weekend show. And then Saturday we recorded the 5-1 as well. I mean, good to get all the feedback today. There's a free video up on the YouTube where I give away my 5-1, my top 5 wrestling video games. The funny thing was we're too old to do like a full 3-hour epic on wrestling video games, like counting down our top 5, because all of our 5 are going to be old. So we'll do 20 minutes on our favorite games from our youth, and then we'll spend the bulk of the show looking at the top 5 wrestling heels, which we still did. But then it turned out the wrestling game chat went at least an hour, and we probably could have gone another half hour. You and Gareth were talking Spectrums and Amigas, and I was giving the full loving for the N64. We covered a lot of ground on that one. We're maybe casuals with it, but this Fight Forever release has kind of ignited the spark in all of us.
I think it has, and I think the fact that you managed to get Gareth to be looking at N64s on eBay during the show.
I want to believe he'll buy one.
Oh, I think he absolutely will. I think you've sold me on it. I want a chipped one though, because I want to be playing Virtua Pro 2. Like that, just after you had completely sold me on that, and I was like, why didn't I get one of these?
Virtua Pro Wrestling 2. I think Virtua Pro 2 was the footy game, wasn't it? Didn't that exist?
Oh, yes, it is. Yeah, sorry.
I think there was that. I think I remember getting that one Christmas, or was it Action Soccer or something like that? It was one of the black ones anyway. But yeah, I was telling you, it's I've got such love for that N64 period that I wasn't even doing a bit when I named my top 5 wrestling games, and they were all on the N64. I said to you, there's communities now who up until the release of the AEW game are out there reskinning still, creating the AEW roster, hacking the game to put moves in. But it was going on even back in the mid 2000s, up until a couple of years ago, right? Until they took the ROH message board down, I'd written a how-to guide. Not that I really know what I'm doing, but how to hack, how you get textures and stuff to hack No Mercy, and the plugins you need on PC only, obviously with a ROM, because there used to be an ROH versus TNA mod that was frighteningly accurate. As far as the wrestlers probably look better on that than they do on Fight Forever, but it had all the moves added and Canadian destroys and stuff like that. And up until a few years ago, I used to still get, because I put my email address on it like an idiot, going, if anyone needs any help, email me for advice, and I'd still get emails about that. That's how popular it was, because that's how much people were fucking wanting to continue to play that game down the years and do it. But yeah, like Connor says, get a Steam Deck and emulator. That's it. Yes, that could be on the old shopping list. I don't know. There's something different about it, though. I think playing those games with your mates, that's my main memory, because you were bringing up how you did have an N64 as a kid. But for me, it's some of the best memories of your life being between must have been 10 and 13, and anytime the 3 other lads in my street who had N64s, anytime one of our parents would go shopping or something like that, we'd be straight in whoever's house it was, playing 4-player GoldenEye, or later on Perfect Dark, or the No Mercy games, Revenge, all of them as well. It was just bringing back all of that stuff. It's so tied to that kind of period in my life.
Oh, mate, I absolutely loved it. I mean, I loved the video that you put up about it, but I mean, it did give me just the massive pangs of regret of not buying an N64 because it just felt like it was the console designed for wrestling at that particular point in time. And it was in the way that wrestling games kind of fell behind where video games have gotten. Like it feels like at that point, that's where they kind of like pretty much fell behind. But that in terms of that modding community, I mean, you think about how passionate wrestling communities are in a number of
Oh
that
man.
modding community as well. And this is when we talk about Fight Forever, this is the thing that they need to embrace more than anything else. They need to make this game so adaptable.
Because that's it, we're all there. It's like it's that old fan who's like, been playing for years and knows what the good games were and knows what the bad games were. Because like there's been a massive chat on our Discord today about like, people's memories
Mm.
of, I think people's like lifespan of the different consoles they got always makes interesting read. Like I always going through the fact that, I got a Master System instead of a Mega Drive for Christmas, which, still hurts me to this day until a year later when I got my Mega Drive. Then I had the PlayStation. Then I had an N64. Then I had the PlayStation 1. And then I just pretty much stopped. Like I got a 360 at one point because I wanted 2K13 and Punk was on the cover. But like everyone's coming out the woodwork, like telling these memories. Like the other thing that like the feedback reminded me of was like we could have absolutely done another 2 hours on worst wrestling games because like until those N64 games came out and in the years since, there's so much shite. There's probably a strong tie as to why I stopped being much of a gamer when like the wrestling games became, just the Smackdown series. And I know everyone loves, Here Comes the Pain's one that a lot of our patrons fed back with, and some of those early 2K games, 2K13, and the most recent one gets a lot of positive feedback. But yeah, I think there's definitely a direct correlation there because I spent most of my youth playing fucking shit wrestling games, like Raw on the Mega Drive and like that Royal. I think you were like a one. There was like we talked about WrestleMania, the arcade game. Remember how fucking crap that was? Warzone and Attitudes. There's like a laundry list of absolute shite that came when we were kids that like wrestling wise that you could do a full podcast just on that.
And that's the thing that ends up turning you off for future games. If you hear it's going to be any good whatsoever, I'm just like, yeah, I'm really skeptical. And there's a lot of games that I wanted to be good. Like I really wanted the Impact game to be good because I thought that'd be like really good for them.
X Division mode, people will always defend that. At least it had that little bit of creativity in it that you could you could say.
There was that. I mean, the ECW game is one of just the laziest game because it's just new skins. What is it on Warzone? And it's just
That's
like
right,
a bare bones version of that as well. Whereas, we talk about it, in terms of Fight Forever, that game, like in terms of the game, the updated Aki engine, isn't it? The AKI one.
Well, people reminded me of that because I was talking about that like it died, and it was like, oh no, there was the the Day of Reckoning couple of games that came out on the GameCube, which I only played like years later. Like one thing we didn't cover, like obviously they used that engine, didn't they, for the Def Jam games, which like more than one listeners come back and gone, surely that was right up your street, Benno, but it never was because it was like I love the Wu-Tang Clan. I loved, me 90s rappers, like absolutely, and I love wrestling. And a crossover sounds like it'd be perfect for me, but it was wrong because it was like it was the No Mercy engine, but you're in a street instead of a ring, and like Method Man can pull out a hammer or something like that, or whatever his weapon was. Yeah, it was similar to those the Wu-Tang games themselves that someone else brought up as well. Like it's just that crossover wasn't what I wanted. You know what I mean? I wanted that engine to be used to do the realistic things you could do in No Mercy and do in Revenge and stuff like that. That's kind of what was screaming out for, not like this. Yeah, this weird game where like the engine had just been like just attached to it, really, just to do a generic fighting game with rappers in it. Did you ever play those ones? Did you ever?
I never did.
Get a hold of them?
To be honest, I think the only way a Wu-Tang game really realistic is if it was just like Ghost Dog Way of the Samurai, the game. I think at that point,
soundtrack.
Oh, an incredible soundtrack for that one. Just like Jim Jarmusch as well. Like just Forrest Whitaker, as you haven't really seen him before. But yeah, no, I never played it. Like Def Jam Vendetta, wasn't it? It just it didn't have the appeal for me because again, it was just like a weird crossover. But it's not like it had like it was so over the top and cartoonish and kind of funny.
That was the thing.
If it was battle raps gone wild, then that would be a much better way of pitching it.
the people who loved it really loved it, and like you said, Chris is in the chat saying that it was fun to play. But I don't know, maybe it's just a me thing, because it's like people will bring it up like other ones like that were after our time, like remember the backyard wrestling games? They were hilarious just because of their pure existence, New Jack, being in the game and stuff like that, like it just being a hodgepodge of like Madman Pondo and rando guys like that. But you could also go like a TV star like a New Jack. Tommy Dreamer might have been in it as well. I'm not 100%. Or like Will was bringing up that WWE All Stars game. Do you remember that one? That was like a more arcadey, like you could go like Savage and Hogan and Warrior, but they were like 5 times as jacked, which takes a lot when one of the characters is the Ultimate Warrior. But like and they do like stupid things, like you do a pile driver, but you basically jump as high as the fucking arena sky and then land. There's a lot of that. A lot of that. It was just never quite what we actually wanted. You know what I mean? It was fun to pick up and play, but nah, I am that old man who was like, no, if it's not No Mercy, it's fucking shit. Which kind of brings us on to our first subject, doesn't it?
Yes.
Obviously, if you want to hear more about those retro games and stuff, patreon.com/GRAPPL. We went into even more detail on there and went through our own personal 5 favorites. That's a flavor of that chat. But the reason we did it is that it informs like most of our kind of disdain for, I think, the WWE series of games. And like I say, there's been improvements in the 2K series, but it's never really been for me. And that was the open goal that they had with Fight Forever, isn't it? Like that was the, okay, cool. We can, like with it, same business plan as AEW. AEW exists because WWE is the number one. And I always say this about like AEW, or more about WWE. Like, this wouldn't happen in any other sport because there's no other sport. Matty's gone now, and I can say it, where the top level in that sport, and for better or worse, for my analogy at least, WWE is like the Premier League, isn't it? Of wrestling, as far as being the brand that everyone knows and the biggest and the richest and the whatever. But like, because wrestling's a work, it can be that number one, but also be actually quite shit, and also like be the the thing that we all moan about as not being good. So wrestling, I think, is like uniquely placed there. You've had competitors, the XFL trying in the NFL. I think Ice Cube's trying something in the NBA, isn't he? But like in wrestling, and I suppose combat sports are kind of the same as well, although that UFC brands are similar things to WWE. You can come in and be like, no, we're going to super save those fans who want that second alternative. And there can be so many of those people that you can draw nearly 1 million people on Wednesdays and do a demo number that's relatively comparative to WWE. That's always been the AEW business plan. It's never been to be number one. It's to be that really successful number two, because wrestling is a unique space where you can absolutely do that. And it's kind of the same thing with the wrestling games, isn't it? Where like, you could come in and be like, okay, those series exist, but there's all these fans who've done nothing but moan about their existence for a couple of decades now, and people like me who've gone, oh, what, No Mercy, and they're trying at least to deliver us that, aren't we? That's what they're trying to do. They even went down to like, wasn't their release schedule? They were trying to bring it out around. I think on a post wrestling, they had an interview. I can't remember his name. It was a games reviewer, and he was saying like, oh, the original plan was there was a big break, wasn't it? Because the 2K series were moving to a new engine, and there was going to be a big break between their two games coming out. So AEW were planning on releasing right in the middle of that window, because what a great opportunity to get those fans who are pissed off at the state of the 2K games, and they can step in and like mop up those fans and take their money. That was the plan, at least, JP.
Yes, that was the plan. I think there's several big things from it, because you speak about AEW going into the space. If it's not for this game, they're profitable. Now, they will be because of Collision and other factors and that coming in. But I think in terms of this game space, it very much is, because it feels like with the gameplay, they've kind of sated the need of actually, they've got a very good idea of what a good playable wrestling game should kind of be, with kick out issues notwithstanding, which is a big deal in wrestling. Let's be honest. Yeah, it is. And I can see what you mean by it. However, the other things around it are kind of very bare bones. And that's being polite, probably. And it feels like, and that's the thing that the 2K environment can give you. And it embraces that modding. But then WWE aren't producing the video game off their own backs as well, because it's obviously it's licensed to the 2K team who are going to end up making the games for them. So in a sense, it's like in that constant churn of production, and that's the thing about the game. It's like I was thinking to myself, this could be great in 2 years, and it's not through like updating the game. It's through adding on what all the potential of this could be and the kind of online environment could be. Because I think it's almost it fulfills the needs of, to link it back to you on the N64. If you'd had this on the N64, you would have gone absolutely batshit, because it would have been absolutely phenomenal for that. And you wouldn't have been worried about the lack of kind of online features, because it wasn't as much of a thing. And you would have kind of just been happy with what it was. But it's just like, well, things have moved on so much. You need those kind of aspects. And it's fun for me to give Sting's Rio's music and make him impersonate Jade Cargill in his entrance. And I won't lie, it's a good laugh, and I'll probably record it at some point. I don't know why I put Rio's music on it. It is like water torture as well. I've heard it more than once. I'm just a masochist.
Yeah, some of the rap songs in the main screens, I'm just a bit like, they're already off my playlist. Let's just say that.
Yeah. Well, I'd give to add to that playlist from my Spotify. But that's and that's the thing. Those things are very bare bones, and that's kind of where a lot of the fun comes in. Like Create a Wrestler is like the obvious one on that. That's the thing where like the potential for it for DLC packs, adding on new wrestlers. This Stadium Stampede thing looks potentially quite good. Like, but these are all things like you need to expand that universe quite massively. Like, you want to have DLC packs of New Japan wrestlers. Like, that'd be a thing. I'm sure New Japan wouldn't have an issue with it.
Yeah, but that's the biggest thing for me. It's like you watch, it's so dated. You watch Collision, or so like I'll say our patrons know, because we mentioned it briefly on the weekend show last week, and we've been talking about it in our Discord. I've had the game for about a month now, maybe just shy of a month. Playing like a demo / test copy before it came out, or a review copy. And like, I mean, first off, when I first loaded it, we could only go Kenny Omega and Shida, so like that was that was how early we got it. And eventually there was an update like very quickly where there were more characters should go and stuff. But it was like, oh fucking hell! All right, is this game not ready? Like, is the I was hopeful. I was like, well, maybe it means there's going to be updates coming to the roster and stuff like that. And the obvious thing you have to say, at the top is outdated it is. Like, the fact that Jericho is still there and it is Neckerchief, and everyone does look a bit pandemic era AEW. Everyone's in their 2019/2020 kind of look, or you've got like, Hobbs is still in Team Taz with Ricky Starks, and you play the career mode, and MJF is still knocking around with Wardlow. There's so many things like that where you get excited watching AEW TV and go, I want to do that. I want to play that. And then you realize you can't because, like, let's say Joe's not in the game, or like I say, or the guys who are in the game are incredibly dated for what they are. So you're already not getting that experience. So what you want is like something that's pick up and play, and for lack of a better word, is that like that No Mercy style that we wanted. And when I was in the early days of playing it, and like filling kind of you guys in as on the Discord as I went as to how I was getting on, that was my first impression. It was like the controls are No Mercy, but it's also a little bit arcadey like the Smackdown games. But overwhelmingly, I was positive. I was like, you know what? Despite those issues with the age roster and a lot of those things, the actual gameplay of it is kind of what I want. And I was having a lot of fun being like, Orange Cassidy and doing all the things. Like the detail in the individual characters, despite them being dated, is amazing. Like you go Darby Allin, and it's so much fun to figure out, oh, I can do a coffin drop off off the guardrail. Oh, I can do it from this situation as well. I can do it from that situation as well. The amount of little detail they put into all those characters is so much fun, and you get so into it. And I was just massively like saying, oh, I'm loving digging into these move sets, I'm loving like being these characters. I was dead positive, and that was day one. And then day two, I was like, you know what, guys, I might have to wait. I don't want to get everyone too excited, because I almost feel like I've already run out of things to do. Because it was like, yes, there's 50 odd wrestlers in the game, and it's cool. I could get, I could go Cody Rhodes right away. I love that. Again, speaks to the dated nature of the game. But once I downloaded him and I like within like 3 days, I'd played through the entire career mode because it only runs a year and there's only 4 pay-per-views. And unless you're really massively asked about going to the gym and eating food and doing those repetitive cutscenes, you're kind of done with that really quickly. And like you said, it's a bit bare bones when it comes to just the basic things you can do. You can have a so again, I had this before multiplayer was available, so I think that was gonna inevitably change my mind. But without it, it was like, okay, we can have a one-on-one match. That's cool. We can have an exploding barbed wire match, like the way they do it, the explosion and stuff, really cool. But it goes off 90 seconds into the match, and after a while, the novelty wears off. I can have a ladder match, or I can have a glitchy casino battle royal. And then I was literally in our Discord going, don't really want to pick this up today. It's like day 4 or day 5. And I was like, don't know really what else I can do in this game as much of fun as I had in those first 24 hours. And that just absolutely speaks to your point.
Yeah. And there are lots of criticisms to level against it. And I think Chris here in the chat kind of really nails what might be the overriding problem with it, which is, and it's the thing about crunching, which is always a big issue in game. And it feels like they had a deadline in place. And you see this in Hollywood. You have a deadline in place. You put out a release date before you even have made it, or even in the process, really. And it's just like, no, you're not. Now you're putting unnecessary pressure on yourself because it's like, they'd already sunk about 20 odd million into this at last count. I'm assuming it's a lot more than that, if not possibly double. And the issue is with that, we're still at a point where it doesn't feel like it's kind of finished. And the problem is with games is that when they come out, and this is when I was looking at things like Metacritic, like what are the critic aggregators, and of that you want to be hitting up and around the 80s, certainly. Rather, not like Rotten Tomatoes, just over there. It's like 64 on PS5, 68 on PC, but it's the same issues that people have, particularly in the user comments as well. So the issue is if the bad word comes out already, you can do all of these updates, but it doesn't make difference because that public perception is this is a very bare bones game. And that's the thing with almost in a way, as much as annoying as it would have been, they've been better off delaying it 6 months, updating people. Like you spoke about how they updated on the N64, like for was it Revenge? That they managed to update Sting from Surfer Sting into Crow Sting.
Oh, that was on WCW versus the World on the PlayStation. Right? So right before it came out, they just gave him a new look of paint, which it was easy to do in those days, wasn't it? It was easy. Yeah, they gave him the black beard, and it was like
at least they did it.
You could do it. Yeah,
multiple Jericho characters. You'd be like, fine, whatever. That's all right. Like that's just that's just an added
take
bonus.
The neckerchief away. Yeah, you'd look like him. That's all you need to do. Like that's what I don't understand. Or the big one for me, the massive one. I haven't even mentioned it. When you first pick up the game and the person guiding you, that's how to do all the moves. William Regal, and it's not even like he's in the game. It's just it's a voiceover and like a picture of him.
Oh,
could they not have made that Taz or like bung Jim Ross a couple more quid to sound slightly more enthused and have him do that bit? Although based on the bits of commentary that's in the game, maybe that's a bad shout. But I know back in the day on the N64, it was easier to give people 4 costumes. Will kind of was talking about that in our Discord today. So maybe I can understand, doing the 4 different looks is harder than it seems in a modern game. Surely they could have done that. I just don't understand how that didn't get updated before it came out. Why is William Regal all over the fucking game,
Oh. Well, while we're on voiceovers, and that's a big issue as well when you get into the career mode, because you get like odd people doing voiceovers, and then it's just like mouthing along to subtitles for weird scenes where Sting is very excited to join All Elite Wrestling, and he goes, and he's wearing street clothes and stuff. But he's like, and then you get James Ross, who, my God, the lack of effort, and we spoke about this, I think, on the weekend show. The lack of effort is shocking. Like it's appalling. It really is like kind of like bollock worthy. Like it's just like no, you need to no. Whoever was directing him there, just went no. There's no effort. It's just I'm going to read the words on the script and I'm going to do it in the most monotone voice possible with zero enthusiasm. And it's like you're a wrestling announcer who likes to tell other people exactly how wrestling should be announced. And here is an example where you're just not like
it's that old attitude, innit? That non he's like, oh, it's for this game. I don't really care. Not realizing people are probably going to be playing this game for generations, and there's going to be like, I say that about those games back in the day, the early Smackdown games and like No Mercy and stuff like that. They made wrestling fans of people. Like it's going out to a gigantic potential audience, and he can't be asked, and that's a big part of it. And it's like that, there's little modes in it. Is like Kenny Omega clearly wasted his time developing, whatever it is, Dancing with Pentagon Jr. or all those little weird games.
Absolute
I wish they'd not.
shit.
Why'd they waste their time on that? I hope it wasn't much time they spent on it.
If they just had it in the spring in the Stadium Stampede thing, that would be so much better. Because then you'd be, all right, that's the silly, wacky side of AEW. And there's a great possible kind of MOBA game as well. But yeah, I had one look at those games and I went, I'm not wasting my time on this bollocks.
Yeah. I mean, how do you find the actual gameplay itself, like working back? Because I said a lot of negative there. What I do, the matches do feel like matches. That was my biggest compliment of like virtual pro wrestling too. Always felt like you're having a big Puro epic. This feels mostly like you're having an AEW match. It's a little bit arcadey. The selling can be spotty, but mostly it kind of works. You can have fun back and forths.
Yeah.
You mentioned before, the big negative is, you have those fun back and forths, and this is why I haven't really enjoyed playing online. Is like, because in my head, I'm having a match and I'm working a match. I used to have that mentality when I play like Revenge or Virtual Pro Wrestling. So you know what I mean? You don't want to finish the match on like a drop toe hold or a sleeper. You want to hit your big move and you want to finish them. Or like I think I'd watched that Dynamite where Sting had gone flying through the tables, and I was convinced I wanted to go Sting and do a splash through a table and win the match that way. And I spent like 10 minutes trying to set it up, and I kept walking into the table and knocking it over, which is a real irritant. And I finally got it up, finally got whoever, I think I was facing Darby maybe for some reason, or maybe it was Jericho. Finally got him in place when I thought he reversed something, did something benign like a headlock takeover and pinned me. And I was just like, that's the gameplay. It feels like a match until those moments, because it is, like you said at the top, so fucking hard to kick out. I can't get it's not me, because I'm seeing tweets everywhere of people having the same issue, but it's like literally no matter what I press, it's like the game has decided, all right, you're gonna lose now. And you could literally a leaf could knock you over and you'd lose the match. And like I think it's because they spent a lot of time, like there's detail in your spirit and all of that, and how like your momentum goes, and certain wrestlers benefit from like flying, certain wrestlers seem to benefit from like cheating more. Really intricate and really cool. So you get like an idea of that on screen, but you don't actually get an overall health. So you never know, you just don't realize that like you're the walking wounded and you're about to die. A small package is going to be the end of the match type of thing. It's just they've just missed that little element of it that would make at least despite all these other criticisms, would make us go. But at the same time, the gameplay is fantastic and there's lots to build on. I think that's a massive glaring problem.
And that is you're right with that, because there are just times where I haven't played it nearly as much as you have, but there were just times where I was just like, oh right, I'm just getting beaten, and I didn't know why. Like when I was playing as Malachi Black, it's like, why is he not getting up off the ground like he was in one of the Battle Royals or something along those lines? What the hell's going on here? What I would say to it, I suppose, is that the problems that this game has are fixable, and some of them are cosmetic, and they don't need to be like absolutely I don't know, they don't need to be, they're not like kind of too over, like they're not like massive issues that can't be fixed. Like the majority of stuff I think with the game itself is you can do stuff with it. It's just that they shouldn't have really released it in this form. That's like,
or charge 50 quid for it. That's the other thing, isn't it? Like that was another one of my things.
Right off for us, in fairness, but like still,
well, I knew there was a reason you'd got it. but that was the thing. I was saying that I've got a free copy. For me, I had a free copy. I was like, I've got a free copy, folks. I'm not telling you should spend 50 quid on it. I'm telling you, I'm having a good time mostly until a few days in. But like, it's not a £50 game, is it? It's just not.
No, it isn't.
And Connor says there about Stadium Stampede. I think they are releasing that as a free download. So that's good. I'm glad they're not charging money for that, because that does feel like it's gonna, like, that's 30 people in a field and you're trying to beat them all. sounds amazing. You know, I'm holding off too much praise because it's like, well, you know, because there's horses and fucking bazookas and stuff in there and stuff, and I don't really know 100% whether it's gonna. It doesn't look like it's gonna be the exact controls you get in a match, and I'm a little bit nervous about that. If it just turns out you can only punch and kick, I think that's gonna be a bit disappointing. But it looks like that's going to add something to that. And I know when Kenny Omega's doing interviews and talking about it on Twitter, he's like, well, that's coming, you know, you can download FTR soon. And he's, you know, because he's saying what you said then, you know, where there was a lot of things we wanted to do, but, you know, money-wise, and he's not passing the buck. Well, he is a little bit.
He is. It's like, but it's the cost of the games itself is enormous. And for a company that's effectively a startup, we haven't reached year 5 yet. You know, at that stage, it's kind of, I don't know, like they're only going to put a limited amount into this. If you had that $1 billion deal, then at that point, although I get worried about that now, that might be a conversation we're having in a little bit. But it's one of these things that, you know, I want them to turn it around. I just feel like if you didn't waste time doing stupid fucking mini games, which are pointless, non-wrestling related. Yes, you might enjoy them when you play Final Fantasy. Great for you. It's not this game though, is it? It's not wrestling. Spend your time on that, because, like, say that, like, there's all this love for the kind of like virtue of pro wrestling too, and the like. Yet they didn't have Mitsuharu Misawa and Toshiaki Kawada having a dance off, did they? They didn't bother with that. Didn't do that shit, did they? No, they cut down. It was meat and potato stuff, but they kind of got that bit right. And that's, in some ways, it feels like they were sidetracked. And it might be, I remember at the time there was the stories about, oh, Kenny Omega's not particularly happy. And I thought, I wonder if one of these games designers who don't really know him just went, look, can you fuck off? Like, you're asking me to add in stuff that's stupid. Like, and there's a lot of stake in, I have to produce a wrestling game.
I feel like he's getting your hatred of the hatred of the 6-man division now. It's like 6-man Kenny versus singles Kenny.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't know, dude. That's the thing. They put Kenny Omega in charge of this division, and we don't know if, like, just because he can play games doesn't mean he knows what he's doing. But he might have been the one with all the good ideas. He might have been the one like, this is the way a match goes. This is the way momentum swings. This is what someone would do in this position in the ring. We don't know. We don't know. But clearly, yeah. Let's blame the Young Bucks. They were probably around. They're always the bad influence with Kenny, aren't they? We can give them grief. I mean, before we quickly move on to like more AEW matters, like, what would you give it as a rating? What's your Metacritic on it? What's your you know, it could be out of 10, out of 100, or a star rating.
60. 3 out of 5. Like, I think that's kind of where it is, where I've enjoyed it.
That's
if you're asking me if
it's
not bad. Like, I know we may sound bad because the expectations are high, but also because there was all these people with this like professed like kind of knowledge of video gaming and what makes a good game and what works for it. And it's like, okay, then in some ways, like, a lot of this stuff feels like it should have been overseen.
Yeah.
Like, someone should have just gone, can we replace Jim Ross? He's shit. Like, someone needed to like make these kind of bigger executive decisions for the games. And particularly in terms of like updating people, it was just like, no, we need them as they are now.
Yeah.
Like, that's what we need in there.
Yeah.
I'd
share that. I think like I first couple of days of playing, or like first day of playing, pretty much, I might have been closer to like a 7.5, even an 8. Then I was a 7, and then a couple of days in, when I realized, oh, right, okay, I've run out of things to do, I was a 6. And to be honest, I haven't really played it much since then, other than like the odd multiplayer game me and Steph have played. I've not really been motivated to pick it up. Maybe Stadium Stampede mode will change my mind. Maybe I just need to sit down and have a proper think and a proper play of. Then again, the career mode's not that deep either. I don't know. I just need something to sink my teeth into with it, and I haven't had that. Maybe more online play is gonna be that thing for me, like you say. But yeah, I think that's fair. 6 out of 10. You know, a 3-star effort. Place to build off, but yeah, we'll see. We'll see if they do. But that's the game itself. Well, we're on AEW. We didn't talk on AEW last week with it being Matty in the Bank week. So yeah, we can do a little bit of a catch up, specifically of a Collision from the weekend. Thank God last week we didn't cover Collision, because I would have been quite negative on Monday. If I'd actually seen it by the time we did Spotlight, I wouldn't have had much good to say. You know, that tape show, I think, is best forgotten now, with Punk on commentary and just the B show feel of it. I joked to you on the weekend show that it felt a bit like when we were watching those Global Force tapes and in prep for that King of the Mountain show we're going to be doing at some point. Like, it felt like tape TV studio wrestling in some ways, and just functional but not really appealing or exciting. And I thought, like, this week they were in real danger because it was like they did that. They had the disaster of a TV rating, which, it came on July 4th weekend. Yeah, there was competition. Yeah, Money in the Blank was on. Yeah, it's a Saturday. It's always going to be a fucking Saturday. But, you know, a 0.13, as we covered on the weekend show, is disastrous in TV terms, I think, for any week, really, and is what a film would do in the same slot. So why would give AEW any more money to be on a Saturday night? And I think this week, coming off that, brave decision to be in fucking Regina, because like I was getting proper 1995 Monday Night Raw Dead Years vibes from the show in a good way, in a way that works as a positive because it was the Owen, so it was like, oh well, that kind of works with the period that Owen Hart is most known for, at least in like the WWF. But they were so lucky that crowd was good, because like that crowd really, like, considering there wasn't many of them, considering it didn't look great on tape, like, they really made this feel like a more atmospheric show than it deserved to be. And kind of, you know, it wasn't just that. I thought the content was a lot better as well, but I felt like they pulled it back this week.
I do as well. And I was thinking about it. It's do you know what it was? And I thought about this, and we've spoken about the criticism of Dynamite that we have, that it's too much in it. I thought stuff had time to breathe here, particularly Joe Punk. I thought had that as well, particularly afterwards, where they were hyping stuff for next week with just some graphics over the top as Punk was recovering and after the attack by Joe, after they shook hands. And I liked that. I went, that's a good way to end it, because it's like, well, what's happening between them? That's the hook to try and get you into next week. Whether that works or not, we don't know, because it may be. And this is the problem that they would have. If they've already given this kind of Rampage vibes already and people think this is very missable, not much is going to happen, that's something they're going to really need to take in place.
Yeah, that was a worry. It was like, because, you know, you look at the pattern of that week before, it wasn't like people tuned in and left. You know, as much as we can criticize the canned feeling of it and all of that and how unurgent it felt, you know, at the same time, maybe that rating was kind of already written in the sky because of, you know, the fact that it was taped or whatever. But doing the same as a Rampage to me was like, well, that's, you know, also at the same time, you haven't put any effort in. Like, it felt like the least effort they've put into a show, and it's episode 3 of Collision. It was just like, come on, we can't let this be Rampage this quickly. You need to, you know, they're doing fundamental things well, and, you know, the one fundamental thing they weren't doing was building the next week, and the next week feeling important and feeling like you have to stay it. And, you know, at time of record, we don't have the number yet. So expecting it probably to come through, obviously, in a non-showbiz daily world, and we don't know when we might actually get the exact number for it. But I kind of hope having that tentpole Punk Joe main event. Yes, it was one for the 2005 knobheads, but, you know, it's a CM Punk built-up match. Hopefully that makes, you know, a big difference to the number. Having that big tag title match in the middle of the show makes a big difference to the number, because you're not going to be able to have that every week. But the weeks you do have CM Punk, they've spent so long building around him, you would hope that he's, you know, going to do better numbers than they did there. But, you know, on a quality point of view, you know, start at Punk Joe. Like, I did. Maybe I'm designed to, regardless. I love that match. I wouldn't say it was a 5-star, you know, in line with the 3 Punk Joe matches that you can hear us talk about at patreon.com/GRAPPL. That'll be that is out there, where we covered in detail those first 3 5-star matches, or close to 5-star matches. But I think I went a little bit trepidatious, like, you know, at this grand old age, is this going to feel a bit like, you know, when the football, what's it called when they do 5-a-side, and the ex-football players on
Masters Football.
Masters Football. It's going to be a bit Masters Football-less. I was worried, and then they went out there, and you know what? They didn't go for the 5-star epic. They just had a really tight, unique feeling. I felt like 15-minute match, and they made use of the 20-odd minutes of TV time they had. I found it, despite not being maybe of the level of those matches in ROH, and it never could be, they went in there and two smart workers worked a smart wrestling match, you know, and I think everything about it was keeping me and again, I'm designed for it, but keeping me glued to me telly. You know, those the little things they were doing. You know, Punk bringing back the headlock and such. You know, I was marking out for that sat in my seat at home. But you know, the entire like first 10 minutes of the match being built around Punk still not being able to keep up with Joe and getting dominated until he finally managed to come back, and then using some of his newer offense that he didn't have, you know, back in the day in the original trilogy to kind of get that bit of an advantage. And then, of course, you know, to pay attention to your 2004, 2005 ROH store, the only way he could possibly beat Joe if he had to beat him to go forward in the Owen was, well, it was going to be a roll-up, because that was always Joe's Achilles heel back in those days. There was just so many of those little things that paid off for me as like a long-term fan of these matches, but just felt in a way where it was like an older school, slowed down kind of take on a main event wrestling match where, you know, every little thing in the match mattered. You could pay attention to those finite details or just look at the broad story they were telling as a whole and have a great time. I just thought it was grown up main event TV wrestling. And very much enjoyed it.
Yeah, it did. And they were smart enough as well to recognize they had 20 minutes of TV time. We do the match in 15 and we do 5 minutes for other things in order to let things breathe as well. And that's what this match did. There's something just about Punk in the ring where you start to watch the matches in a kind of strategic way, because that's how he's kind of conditioned it. It says about that sort of level of worker that he is. And the fact that Joe isn't Joe of 2005, but he's still this kind of like immovable force, but has weak points. He's got the aura as well. And that was the thing I kind of was happy about. I was like, Joe being used properly. And like we said before, when we thought this might be one of the first feuds they go to, like, and it was like this and Jay White, and you kind of go, they're good for kind of two very different reasons, aren't they? One's working with a guy who's very fresh in this kind of environment, and the other one's working with an old rival who had the best of it. Just like it's the best of both worlds. If you're going to have him as a baby face in his early stages before we get the full-on kind of CM Punk as like shitbag heel, like before we get to that point, we're going to have this. I really
isn't it interesting to that point as well? That, like, despite him being a heel in a lot of Canada, smaller town went for him. Felt 100%. I felt like I didn't hear about, you know, which is, I suppose there are going to be those towns, aren't there? So you can continue to do the tweener thing where he's Brett, you know, 97, ironically, in Canada and other places.
Wearing pink and black, he'll help, won't it?
Yeah, that's it. I'm doing the promo at the start. That was a really smart move. In both ways. One, to kind of ingratiate himself to the crowd right away. But two, just as like, oh, this feels different, doesn't it? You know, having the wrestler in the main event come out off the top. You know, they do the little speaky bit, don't they, at the start now? Music.
I like those.
Out he come. Didn't waste his music pop either. Didn't use cult of personality. Just came straight out. Didn't even get in the ring. Stayed on the outside. That looks different. That probably added to that Raw 95 feeling. You know, they'd always do those shots, wouldn't they? Maybe that's better in a smaller venue to do that. You know, you can show the busy crowd like stood behind them at eye level. But everything about it felt different. It felt fresh, and I think it played. You know, it was nice to have that. That's the thing WWE do that AEW don't. WWE, Roman Reigns is over, so Roman Reigns gets the opening segment in the main event, you know, and Raw happens, and, you know, Seth Rollins gets his promo segment, and then he's in a match later on. The important characters are featured throughout. AEW's like Dynamite, you get your one segment and you're done. That's usually the way things are done, whereas this is another one of those different things about Collision, I think, where you're getting that establishing bit at the start, and they're getting double the money out of Punk by using him there, and then using him in the main event.
Well, do you know what? I was looking at the results for this, and I think this is and this ties into that point. Think of how many people we used throughout this show. Obviously, you had Punk and Joe, and Punk appeared twice. FTR Bullet Club Gold, and FTR like kind of appearing twice as a kind of story, two connected storylines. You had Ricky Starks near the beginning and near the end. I mean, it was the fact that Powerhouse Hobbs had 3 people at ringside with him that kind of added up. There was a Julia Hart match, Scorpio Sky match, but it wasn't crowded. People had room to do more than one thing on the show, and it wasn't like you have 30 seconds. This week you're getting just a backstage promo package. Yeah. Next week you get a match. You're not getting that. You're actually having that between. Yeah. And I think that is something that's really, really, like, really strong as well. As you can hear, Grapple Charlie in the background.
I'll take over for a sec. But yeah, that's absolutely, that's it. And, you know, we don't have to go through every segment in the show. It's pretty much a 2-segment show in a lot of ways. It's the main event and it's the tag in the middle. But like, just to touch on a couple of those other things, I was glad to see, like you say, Ricky Starks being used strongly. You know, that was the other, you know, Owen Hart semi-final match, and getting to see kind of, you know, him being developed as a character. That's what a big thing that I think Collision is doing right now, in that it's using, unlike AEW where it's like sink or swim, you get your 1 segment and you're done. I think Steph pointed this out. They're making a real effort to rehabilitate some of these characters and go, okay, this is who Ricky Starks is. This is the level he is, and he's going to be a constant presence on TV, maybe multiple times through a show. Hobbs, you know, thank God we're moving away from the QT Marshall stuff. It feels like we're probably going to get a couple of weeks of feud, unfortunately, to get there. Like, fucking, I can't believe we lived in a world where they once went off a Dynamite, and the main event of Dynamite, it was after the pay-per-view as well, ended with the big reveal that QT Marshall was going to be Hobbs' manager. Like, that was a big deal. Like, I still can't believe that happened. And I can't believe it's taken us this long, but thank God we're getting away from that. But we are, you know, for better or worse, getting an arc with the character of Powerhouse Hobbs. Malachi Black being built back up, whatever you think about him. Andrade is getting, you know, some actual development time, whatever you think about him. And the biggest, you know, I think compliment I can give Collision as a show, it's become the Jay White show. If Punk is 1A, I think he's 1B right now. Or he's in that mix. I suppose it's Joe and FTR, but he's in that cast of main characters with Ricky Starks that, you know, again, another reason it feels a bit Raw 95, almost a somewhat bare bones roster. And don't get me wrong, there's negatives to that, because the week's Punk's not going to be here. We're going to see, you know, how bare bones that roster is in a lot of ways. And until they have fully built these guys up, we're going to be in a situation where, yeah, there's going to be, you know, these guys are going to be finding their feet and discovering who they are and getting over. But Jay White feels like a different man compared to what he was in his introduction, you know, in those Dynamites, when they had, like, you know, him and Juice Robinson were presented pretty much as equals for my money at the start. They never made him feel like a former IWGP champion. I think Juice Robinson got some pelters from me just by virtue of being the guy that felt like was stealing screen time almost from Jay White, and, you know, cutting promos when it should have been Jay cutting promo or having more of the promo time. But on Collision, while they are being used as a team, Jay feels like the 1A. He feels like the 1B, like his, you know, he's his henchman, essentially. He's his wacky sidekick, the role he should be. And Jay is having all of this TV time to establish himself, if the AEW audience weren't familiar with him from New Japan stuff, make them familiar with him. And he's knocking out of the park. It's great to see. And he's been an absolute highlight of this show this last few weeks.
I think he has been. I think you can just see the potential. I mean, I don't want to see him with Bullet Club Gold. That's the thing I have an issue, like, massively with. Is like just that brand name.
Selling tees on me. Number one seller on PWTs, you know. I don't know why. I don't know who. Don't get me wrong. Who's buying them? Like, who needs a Bullet Club shirt at this point? But apparently people do. I got that blue. When I read that, I was like, for fuck's sake! Like, who are the cunts still buying these things?
I have no idea at all, other than the fact it's got gold on it this time around. And it's like, really?
Yeah,
this is where we're at. It's Malibu Stacy all over again, isn't it? But I think, like, just the use of him, he feels like you say is like a main character. Hobbs mentioned as well, like with Hobbs and Starks, like after the Jericho stuff and everything, he's just being put into a kind of a much more interesting mix as well.
Much better.
I'm intrigued by what they do in the final with him and Punk. Much like, you know, in terms of the, like, this Owen Hart tournament feels a bit more interesting because it feels like it's being used to kind of develop one, rather than we're going to have Adam Cole and Britt Baker win. Like, there's the obvious kind of thing that they went for in the last one. At least, like, because I keep on thinking, well, what's going to happen with Ricky Starks? Because it's obviously he came out on the stage at the end, and I liked that because it wasn't like an over-egged final angle and everything else, but it was just reminding you, actually, this bloke's in the final against him next week. He should take an interest in all of this stuff that's going on. So, just a much more.
He shouldn't just disappear. He's had his segment. He's gone home now, because that's what it feels like sometimes.
That's it.
Yeah,
they should be hanging around, but overall, like you say, a much more improved show.
I love that tag match. I really did. Like, to just to quickly go back to that, I think there's criticism of it you can give. Like, I think so. This is the FTR and Juice and J match. But I think for 15 minutes they were having as good a tag match as I've seen in AEW. Like, it was incredible. Like, there started to be one too many near falls, and it was annoying that because again, I'm gonna turn into like a Randy Orton fan here and go on about Jay White's footwork and his positioning and his work in the hard cam and stuff. But he is very good at those little things. He's a silky smooth pro wrestler, and one thing he's amazing at, as well as reversals, which we all know, it's those last second kickouts. They just did maybe one too many of them. But I was just sitting back and just admiring like his work in this match. I almost said admiring his body, and that too. But like, he was just like, he was so good for the full, like, pretty much stretch of this match. I felt like, I'm past the point of knocking Juice. He felt a little bit behind the pace. There were a couple of spots where he was late for, or our position for it felt like he wasn't quite up with the rest of them. But the weird work rate gets thrown around a lot, but the work rate out of pretty much the four of them for 15 minutes was fucking incredible. I could feel everyone on the timeline going mad for it, Discord going mad for it, the people in the arena going mad for it. And then it was like, okay, now lads, come on, you've done like 4 kickouts now. And then they got to the last minute of the match, and I'm not even blaming Juice for this one. Somebody was out of position. Somebody got something
That's
wrong.
What I wondered.
Because the four of them were kind of wandering into each other in the ring, and then it was a DDT finish, and it was like, that didn't feel like that's where we were building to from where we were. And they just lost it, I felt like, in those last couple of minutes. You went from having what was like I thought a 4.5 star like tag match that could have even gone higher, and then I was like, okay, this was a 4-star tag match. It took that much out of it. It was like, because the finish is, an important part, but you can't, it was too long, absolutely, as Cyber says there, but you can't, take away from the good work they did building up to it. And, they've set, that's another thing, there's a hook for next week. They've set up the 2 out of 3 falls for next week.
Yeah.
I worry that might make them lead into excess even more. I hope not. I hope they've learned lessons from this one, and we do things a touch tighter. But like, I was loving this. This was great. This was the other main thing on the show, I think, to mention. It was just great TV.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. And I thought, like I say, from an in-ring perspective, this was like generally, I would say, like a kind of a much better week with the main event and this match in there as well. And it was funny for that finish in the match, because I suppose I'd taken it as, even though it didn't look it, I thought it's almost like you convince yourself, no, actually, he's just been very, very subtle at stopping the one with hair breaking up, FTR Bald getting pinned. It's easier than trying to remember their names. And so I was kind of fine with it as well. And it kind of fit in with the kind of sleazy way that they are as characters and how they would win matches. So I suppose that suspension of disbelief that you always want with wrestling, they kind of kept that very much intact. Chris mentions here as well, I have to say, the Miro promo, like, it's the dead-on seriousness with the ridiculous comment about his wife that he'll throw in there in all of it. But just like as an aside, double-jointed hot wife. His comic timing is really down. However, I am at the point where it's like, I think we are, rather like CM Punk doing commentary, we're past that point. We need involvement. We need actual interact. That just feels like how to not have him wrestling every week. Well, we'll have him do commentary. It's like a lazy way around it. And I think for this, like for Miro, I want to see him in a feud or a storyline, a proper one, against someone who feels like they're up around a high level.
They get there, mate. All they have to do is, bring Goldberg in, and Goldberg can be Miro's god, and then we're sorted. I want the role of God to be played by Bill Goldberg. That's what I want. That's why and then they face off at Wembley. Come on, that's what I'm hoping for.
Well, I want Goldberg at Wembley because I've never seen him wrestle live, and it's just that box. That box is very much ticked then at that point.
As a one-off, I'm saying, by the way, as well.
He has to lose. Can I just stress that? That's the important. I want no more than 5 minutes, and it's him versus Miro can be a backup for him versus MJF, like, which is like, I think that would be like kind of all manner of awesome if they're able to do that. Yeah. That could be some really great stuff there. Now I've got you a special opponent for Wembley, and it's just
for a counterpoint. Yeah. I fucking love it. For a counterpoint, I would say I love those Miro programs. I'll take more of them every week, but I get what you mean. I do want to see him do something in ring because he's a very talented wrestler too. But the big thing to say, I suppose, going into this week, next week's Collision's I've got Punk and Ricky Starks in the men's final. Like you say, that can go either way. That might be a key one in the potential heel turn of CM Punk if the real life stuff won't do it for you. Especially I very much enjoyed that story this week where he apparently threw his name in the hat to be in the in the blood and guts match. I said this on Twitter. I was like, you know what? Apparently the Young Bucks turned him down, and that makes that's Punk babyfacing himself and making them look like the petty children who won't work with him. Never mind the fact, on a week's notice, it's probably a bad shout. But like what he should have pitched, can I be on your team, lads? I'll be on the Elite. He could have came out in like full BTE gear and stuff like that. A Brandon Cutler behind him. If you're going to go full troll, he should have gone with that. Can't have been a real offer that. I just feel like something must have been lost. Oh, he's got a great poker face if he really did offer that.
I want to believe it as well. I mean, he is who he is. This is the Scorpion and the Frog.
A gobshite. Yeah.
He is. He's an absolute gobshite. And he's a piss taker as well. And there's no getting around this stuff. And they can't cope with it because passive aggression isn't going to work here with someone who's just being full on.
Well, yeah, so that's obviously dependent on Punk's schedule going forward. Him and Ricky Starks at Collision, FTR against Jay and Juice in that 2 out of 3 of all match, and then this week's Dynamite we got the dream match you were hoping for, JP. Chris Jericho versus Commander, Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin against Sammy Guevara and Daniel Garcia. We've got Ruby Soho versus Sky Blue. We've got Nick Wayne versus Swerve Strickland. They had that cracking promo for Nick Wayne last week. I actually thought that might be something they build a lot longer, but again, Swerve's a perfect opponent, being from that same area. He's another one of those lads, isn't he? Another one of those Buddy Wayne kind of adjacent guys. And we've also got Orange Cassidy and Darby Allin versus MJF and Adam Cole, versus Brian Cage and Big Bill, which is the payoff to Brian Cage and Big Bill absolutely killing it on Rampage this week. I don't know if you've seen it, mate, but it was almost good enough to turn me into a fan of Brian Cage. Their powerbomb lariat finisher. Oh, it was brilliant. They had a few moments like that, but I think it was made clear Bill's the 1A, Cage is the 1B. Seems to happen to him a lot, to be honest, in his career. Who knows why? Actually, despite my misgivings about some of the Cole and MJF stuff, I'm kind of looking forward to that because I think MJF being terrified of Big Bill is going to be great TV.
If we can just turn Big Bill into Sid, like I can be all right with that, and then Brian Cage can be Dan Spivey. As far as I'm concerned, like, the Skyscrapers in 1989, that's the thing they haven't got. A couple of fucking massive blokes as a tag team. Dare I say it? That's something that tends to always go down generally well in wrestling because you hide the limitations, don't you? And you have those fun double teams you can do with someone that's Big Bill size. But yeah, they're the reasons to feel excited about AEW.
That's it. Not Jericho Commander then, mate. You're not excited for that? Or Darby Sammy, genuinely, that looks good.
Yeah. Those things will be. And I mean, I suppose with Jericho, this is all about what they're doing with him and his current storyline of like, am I too old for this shit? Where you wonder where that's going to go, or if this is just another ruse for him to turn heel in some Ric Flair-esque way.
Think he'll be in blood and guts? I hope not.
I hope not.
I'm
assuming Kota Ibushi.
Cutting that promo.
It's who else? I mean, is there anyone?
Evil Uno? They put him over Hangman Page on Rampage, so maybe that's what they're setting up. That's that.
Taking a piss.
I think
seriously.
Oh, he pinned Hangman Page clean in the middle. Well, not clean in the middle. It was a lot of interference, but he pinned him in the middle on Rampage on Friday. Yeah, I was like, does anybody want the Dark Order to be involved in this story?
No.
Like, other than the most hardcore, the hardcore BTE fans, like, I feel like if we're all honest with ourselves, as much as we enjoy the people involved in the matches, the Elite versus Blackpool Combat Club has ran its course. I think we need to get blood and guts out the way and move on. What it didn't need to thrash it up was those fucking geeks getting involved. And yeah, they did in fact book Evil Uno to pin Hangman Page on Rampage on Friday, which I know there was a lot of bullshit and interference. I know it was to lay this story. It might even be to justify putting Evil Uno in the match. Again, as I said last week, I still wouldn't book it. It was my wrestling promotion, and it took putting Evil Uno over Hangman Page in any scenario to tell the story I'm telling. Just wouldn't tell that story, I leave it on YouTube with the rest of the nerd shit. It just couldn't be happening.
Taking a piss.
But I honestly wonder whether that's why, whether like he's going to be involved in some form, maybe on the Blackpool Combat Club side.
then it hits the eternal problem here, isn't it? Where it's just like they're working against people and acts and in divisions, which, considering what the star level that they're meant to be at, is
Oh, the makes you mean?
Yeah, like, and that's the thing here, and that's the problem, is that like you say, the Dark Order's kind of run its course. There was a point in time they could have gone in a much, like, I thought all the build up to Hangman winning the champion and stuff like that. That was all really good stuff and really good week to week TV. And there's a lot to be said about the Dark Order as a faction and what they kind of meant for like the undercard, mid card. But that's where they should be, like, not in what is going to be, well, the Elites feud after Blackpool Combat Club. And it's just like, can we just break you fuckers up for a bit as well? Can you wrestle some tag matches, Young Bucks? I don't know. You booked a division. You build yourself as the best tag team in the world. Fancy some tag team matches? No, not with your mates.
Well,
like, not with this clique bullshit. Sorry, this is the same as fucking Sean and Hunter wanting to work Kevin and fucking Razor. That's the same old bollocks all over.
The Kevin and Razor, weren't they? So that's the difference. But to his credit, when Kenny gets dragged kicking and screaming out of his comfort zone, you get like that Dynamite rating last week. Another show where the main event quarter, because it was a main event Kenny Omega singles match, did very well. Yeah. Almost tells you that's what you should be doing with them. And I think we're leaning that way. So, you know, we're getting a lot of that. I think we're getting out of this world, I think.
Him and Takeshita are something I'm really looking forward to. I think as a match, it's going to be something that's just going to be off the level.
Probably more all out, that one, isn't it? If all in, more all out.
Yeah, probably more all out.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I think that's probably. I think there's going to be a lot of people doing double duty. That might be one where you could get away with that if Kenny's in a busy in an Ospreay match on Saturday. That was an excuse to talk all in. By the way, we had our All In YouTube video for this week. There's no update really, other than Tony Khan saying in an interview that apparently they've hit in the region of 70, which I think is 68 still, because technically that's in the region of. Maybe it's closer to 69 now. Maybe that's why he's more comfortable saying that, but we don't really have an update there. Do you think anything else to build right now for All In? Do you think Cole and MJF is there? Do you think Sting and Jericho is there? Because it's the next pay-per-view, isn't it? I know there's something on the way, which is like distracting us all, and there's All Out on the back of your head that's also thinking, but maybe the card's taking shape in front of our eyes.
I hope it's not. We're not getting Adam Cole MJF. I was stressed that as well. That's not like. I want to see singles, mate. I want to see them structure this. I want there to be quality control for who gets on this card, rather than packing the card with people's mates. This is not the best foot forward in the rest of it. And I can't help but feel, as much as I enjoyed the half-an-hour draw, and I really did enjoy it, and I thought it was like probably the best Adam Cole match in AEW. If we're talking what could be the largest attended wrestling show with paid-for tickets, or whatever the weird get-out clause is, this isn't a big enough match for me. Like, not even like, I mean, I say MJF Goldberg because at least that's spectacle. Adam Cole MJF isn't spectacle if we're going to have this. And then really what we're going to end up having is 4 weeks of comedy skits until the inevitable point where MJF does something really shitty and then they have to go into serious mode to build the match. And that's where I fear it's going to go. And that's quite a lazy way to do it. I think you do this on TV because you want to build up the product. So the way I kind of wonder, like, how they get Jamie Hayter into the mix and stuff like that in terms of the title, because I kind of think they want to do that in Soraya. So I kind of wonder if they're going to do some sort of title switch with that. There's a lot of weeks of TV, and they kind of really need to start getting the ducks in the row for it now, kind of properly, for where it is. You don't want, this doesn't need 4 weeks of build. You can't look at the ticket sold and say it's there. It's just like you've got an opportunity to put the best fucking wrestling show on a massive scale of all time. You go and take it, and I just think
that's what they've got left, isn't it? That's the card they've got left to play. When we look at it and go, they're nearing 70,000, you know, as the paid number, and the overall numbers past 75,000 at this point. How are they going to beat those records? How are they going to beat whatever it's 80, 81, whatever your line in the sand is? It's going to be when they announce the card, isn't it? So I think they will. I think actually, I think it's Kenny Ospreay 100%.
Yeah,
it's what else is there. But yeah, based on the TV right now, there isn't. Maybe they're going to pull some rabbits out of hats, you know, and we'll get more prestigious stuff. Let's say.
Yeah, there's stuff there that can pop a TV rating, and I think you want to use that stuff to build the buzz. To have Adam Cole and MJF as a big match.
We're 6 weeks away. There's ages. So I think a lot of the stuff we're seeing now that could be all-in stuff is also, like you say, potentially main event Dynamite stuff. You know, MJF and Cole might be paid off before we get to all-in, you know, and then we start the 4 weeks before we start the proper cycle to all-in. So I guess we'll see from there. But yeah, unless there's anything else on AEW, we are bouncing around a lot today. So we got some Brit Wres chat to come and some a Dark Side of the Ring catch up too as well, JP. But I thought maybe go to this now. We'll do a quick catch up of.
There's a link between the two.
Oh, go on.
Because obviously with Willow Nightingale, they referenced her losing the New Japan Strong title, and they also, I think, showed like some footage of Eddie Kingston as well winning the Strong title.
We don't have to spend too much time on last week's Strong shows because they're a little bit dated now. But like, yeah, we've got to talk about Eddie Kingston. And like, here I actually only got to watch that today. Those two New Japan Strongs, the Independence Day shows. So they were pay-per-views, weren't they, on New Japan World? And there was so much going on last week that there was just absolutely no way we were gonna get to them in time. But despite them being dated, I had a tear in my eye when Kingston was celebrating after the match with Kenta. Don't get me wrong, it was a 3.5 star to 3.75 star match at best, because it's, you know, Kenta in 2023. But it was, you know, it felt like a proper like Korakuen style main event. And it was just, it's more about that, getting to see Eddie win a big one, you know, something we would like to. No, I'm not going to do the lazy comparison to his AEW booking, but it is definitely something I'd like to see him do in AEW, because he's been until he went away to Japan, he's been a real shot on the arm, like quality-wise and momentum-wise to the AEW TV. And yeah, sometimes it's nice to see good things happen to good people here.
Oh, absolutely. I think for this, and you described the match, but if you don't see the match, you're fine with it. Watch his post-match promo. Watch the celebrations with homicides and stuff like that, which was just like kind of really good to see. And it also, I think the way to view these shows is, this is very much like, it's an offshoot of New Japan. But in many ways, if they use this roster and have it as like, they have special shows in Korakuen once every 3 months, in some ways I want to see these type of shows as opposed to New Japan Strong in the States, because the fans here were really hot, and that was part of it. They were chanting for Eddie Kingston straight away. They knew who he was, which this is going to be an audience that watches New Japan Strong on New Japan World. This is going to, that's why I always say run Korakuen. This isn't the kind of stuff you talk, because I don't think they'll get the reactions. They know who all these people are. They know who Filthy Tom Lawler is, clearly. They know who Eddie Kingston is. They also have access on New Japan World in Japan to Dynamite and Rampage, and I'm assuming Collision as well. So they're going to be very familiar with who he is, and it made him feel like a massive deal. And it was just like, you couldn't help but feel that it's like, this can work, putting a title on him. He has the credibility to do it. You need to look past the superficial aspects of things and realize what you've got here is a character who's engaging, because the moment he came out to Korakuen, you could see him looking around. This is his first singles match in Korakuen as well, they were saying on commentary. So obviously he'd only made his debut there in the tag match the night before, when he was when he was in that. That's like, it just felt like it's interesting, because how it's going to be him being booked in the G1, because he's the strong champion, which means they're going to want to protect him a bit, which is really good. And that's great. It means he can get to a quarterfinals. You think, European Championship winners in footballers getting to a semi-finals of a World Cup is the kind of stuff you'd expect. Yeah, you're hoping that with New Japan with him.
No one's expecting him to win it, are they? But you kind of, you didn't want him to be that guy who just lost all his matches. Don't think he's going to be that guy now, because that was the thing. Like, this Korakuen crowd, like, it's a different crowd. It's the hardcore of the hardcore, in Japan, and they maybe would be more in tune to who he is. But he had that connection he has everywhere else with every other crowd, and especially at the end when he was crying and stuff, you could tell the crowds were cheering him and were, along for the ride with him. And, that you could see those fans in the front row, like fist bumping him and stuff. Just, it's a human touch, isn't it, that Eddie Kingston's got? And he does that with every single crowd he comes into contact with. There's no language barrier there. As good as the promo was, post-match, it's about him as a person translating. I've got no doubt. I think he's going to do, he's going to do himself proud, I think, in this G1. I really do. I think he's going to have, it's a couple of potential. We'll get into the G1 in a second, good matches he can have in his block. But overall, I think it's going to be a good establishing run for him if he does want to come back. And I'm sure he'll want to, do more stuff out there. So, no, I love that. Thought that absolutely worth seeing. Like you say, couldn't have said it better. Maybe you don't need to see the match at this point, but definitely see the promo and the post match. And I think the other notable thing from these shows, speaking of Kingston, Homicide being out there, he's held together by sticky tape at this point as Homicide. I'm not a blind 2005 ROH fan. When he did those little spots at AEW, he's been another one people have brought up as a potential blood and guts guy for the Moxley team, which would make sense from a storyline point of view based on his associations in New Japan and AEW. But Homicide is what Homicide is at this point in his career. I didn't care though. It was great to just see him out there having again him and Moxley as like this deathmatch like tag team against Despy and Junker Zag was just like, oh, it was delightful. It hit all Homicide's weaknesses for me, as a 2023 wrestler. It was, if you're not into those types of matches, you might think that's also skippable. I actually don't think it is. The singles match the next night, with Moxley and Despy was great too. But I actually thought the tag match was better. I just loved the wild, unpredictable, they're all over the place nature of it. And it's like, it was a great lesson in, death matches can be done badly. And I think I get painted as the deathmatch guy because I've got more of a tolerance for it than anyone else on this podcast. But what I've got a tolerance for is for when it's good and when it's hot and when it feels like a fight. And this felt like a fight with all four of them. And it did in the singles match the night after as well. But this was probably the highlight of the two shows from what I saw.
Yeah, I would go with you on that. And that's me talking about death matches. And it's partly, it's Junker Sai was like a big part of this for me because the crowd loved him. He's unique. And I think this is the thing that New Japan Strong can do in Japan, where they can bring in people like that. They can have death matches because it doesn't necessarily fit into the New Japan proper product, but you've got this offshoot that you can do this stuff where fans are wanting to see a more Americanized style of wrestling. And I think that's the kind of thing that I think really works. I loved this match. There were points when I was watching it, and I have to confess, I was feeding Charlie at the time, and I was just going, "Oh my god!" Don't worry, I didn't have it like on the TV in front of his eyes. He's not watching Junker Sai pull out a
There's his introduction.
Because I was just like, at points, I was going, "Oh Christ!" It's like the stuff
the
with
skewers on the head. Did they enjoy that?
The skewers in the head was great. Is great, and
obviously it was a great visual in it.
Showing phenomenal visual as well.
Yeah.
And but I think the thing that this match had that was different is three of the people involved are really good workers. Junker Sai, like when they were doing like it's the thing that works for him in deathmatch. I'm trying to think of the other guy who's a great deathmatch wrestler in Japan who I've seen, where they work at a pace which this had because they went all like up and had a big brawl into Kurikan as well, which I thought was tremendous. And then when they got down and they did the kind of spectacle spots, they didn't dwell, it didn't take an ages for a setup and stuff like that. They had the crowd with them as well. And then they interspersed kind of wrestling with this at the same time. And I think the thing about Homicide being in there is it meant that there was enough good people involved that there wasn't too much emphasis on him being, being used in that particular way. And he was there to eat the pin, which he gladly did. And I will say in the Homicide chat, it made me think of all the recent Ring of Honor deep dives that we've done. And I've loved doing each and every one of them. I was thinking, I would like to see a Homicide one just to get an idea of why that character at that particular time was so kind of, because obviously I've seen Homicide in late years and I always get the feeling, like you say, it's just like, this isn't Homicide of 2005. And I'm like, I really need to go and sort of study Homicide of 2005 because just at that moment in time, the connection and stuff he had. And if this is his role in wrestling and he's all right with this, I think this is great. And also, I imagine he's a gateway as well for lots of lots of wrestlers in the Northeast and everything else.
Totally, yeah.
And the ties there as well. He'll have known Rocky for years and the rest of it. And it's
they were in the Rottweilers, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where I think that's another thing. Maybe it's a little bit jobs for the boys why he's getting these bookings, but it's because he's so beloved from that time and he was so influential in a lot of guys' careers. So yeah, I've seen him say like that might be my last time getting to go to Japan, but I'll take it type of thing. Like he deserves it, and I loved it. And as Connor said, I love that. I love the second night as well. I did think the singles with Mox and Despy, they've just got such good chemistry. Them two, like they feel like I'm so shocked. Like how did they? I know they had this endless BCC feud going on, but how did that not factor into Forbidden Door in any way? Like something with Moxley and Desperado, considering they've got this rivalry feud going on. I know these New Japan Strong shows were coming up, but you know, I think Moxley would have been bang up for it. So yeah, and he's bang up for anything. He's clearly having the time of his life out there, and it's lovely to see. Anybody concerned trolling on behalf of John Moxley, let me tell you, he doesn't give a fuck. Like he's not asked that you think it's beneath him to be stabbed with a fork or whatever. This is just on Moxley doing what he loves. So yeah,
mate, he's just bleeding. He's just bleeding the whole time, and he's loving it, and he's justifying the bleeding as well. For it,
shame he's not in the G1, and I wish he was.
Yeah,
but again, you know, AEW can't.
And Despy, like as the 5th man in BCC, if they announced that, I'd be happy with that. I know that wouldn't be the kind of ratings draw thing that they would want, but in some ways,
they should have, though. During the Forbidden Door period, you could have. I mean, I suppose they didn't know about Brian, did they? So, you know, cut them some slack. But shame, opportunity lost. But you know, we're going to give the full G1 tournament a big preview on the Grapple Weekend show on Patreon on Friday, because unbelievably it is this weekend. We do have Saturday and Sunday's cards are free on New Japan World as well. That's been announced too, so that's cool. Couple of the matches in there you probably wouldn't watch for free. It's that old, you know, if they were wrestling in my back garden, I'd close the curtain situation. But the first 2 nights of the G1 are free, so you know we'll take it. It's all for blocks as well. But yeah, speaking of you know what's going on there, we've obviously got, from the matches there. And anything stand out for you, JP? We've got on the Saturday, we've got A Block, Sonada versus Hikuleo. That doesn't sound like it's your type of thing. Yota Tsuji, Kaito Kiyomiya might be interesting. Shotsurumo v Ren Narita, Chase Owens v Gabriel Kidd. We got Taichi v Ospreay in the B block, Okada v Great Khan, Tangaloa v Kenta, and Yoshihashi versus El Phantasmo. And then the Sunday show is in the Greg's offer match, Tamatonga versus Evil, Shingo versus Eddie Kingston. There's your one. Becky Nichols v Aaron Herrera, Ishii versus David Finlay, and then the D block, Naito, Jeff Cobb, Tanahashi, Zack Sabre Jr. Feel like Excalibur here. Shane Hayes versus Alec Coughlin, and Hiroki Goto versus Toru Yano. Speaking of the big man, I do feel like Kingston versus Shingo is my absolute standout from the opening weekend, and be fun to get to watch live Saturday, Sunday.
It's G1 time again, baby. And I know, like I say, we're going to be talking loads about that on the weekend show. I also want to point everyone in the direction of our Discord. And again, I mentioned Connor and God's work that he has done on there, in the sense that we've got a G1 Pick'ems contest this year. So if you want to join in, go check the links out. They'll be on the feed here. And then go over to the Discord, sign up for it as well. It'll be a disaster for it, because I think... But this is the good thing about this year's Pick'ems, is I think there's a lot there that we don't know because of the quarterfinal mix. I think there's a lot of interesting scope for stuff that they can do. Where my interest is going to be in the first couple of days is probably like from you going through the list, and not a hell of a lot sort of really standing out, if anything. But it's how people are positioned. It's who gets those kind of early wins. Who are the people that they're taking seriously, and those people as well, like a Gabriel Kidd. Where are they going to factor into all of this as well? And I think these are the kind of interesting things about this G1, is there's just an element of unpredictability, be hoping, because there's so many kind of new, young, fresh people, without getting into Yota Tsuji's in there. I think he's got a good match on the opening weekend as well. I'm trying to think of who that's.
Yeah, I was just saying Yota Tsuji versus Keita Kiyomiya. That's the first day. Yeah,
that's like Kiyomiya himself. There's like this utter wild card that they've thrown into the mix here. We'll talk about it more on Friday, but that's the stuff in there. And Alistair says
to win
to win the whole thing.
Who are you giving in Connor's Pick'ems? We'll put a link in the show notes to get everyone involved.
I'll be going through it properly. I think really probably tomorrow Wednesday, to kind of nail the whole thing down. For who wins it, I mean, because I think Okada's not going to be in the title match this year, and I don't see Sonada being in there. So it's someone who's going to win it, who's going to kind of take it off him as much as anything, just to be able to take the belt off him and be kind of credible. I'm going to go left field on this, because I think they can do it, because they're in an interesting position with the IWGP champion. He's probably going to end up losing it before the Dome. So I know Chris has gone with Naito. I don't want them to do that. I think Shingo is
Spoilers.
the most
I've already done one set of pick'ems and I came out with Naito. It's up in the same boat. As is Connor here as well.
Bollocks. I just don't think he's got the legs in him. I think that's it. And it's kind of about the momentum of a tournament where Shingo is that person who they've regularly kind of, he's that workhorse to kind of get his way through. And I think they can take that kind of a
it's whether you believe Sonada's still going to be the champion, you know. A lot of it, you know, what's the Wrestle Kingdom match in that case, and that's kind of why I end up Naito. It's like, they're doing Naito Sonada, aren't they? They're going to bore me to tears, and that's coming. But I could also see like I don't know, Ospreay could win the G1 and then Okada somehow gets the belt back before January 4th and they do something in that direction. I don't think that's completely out of the realm of possibility. They obviously fucking love Yota Tsuji, but I think it's probably too soon for him. But in the pick'ems I've done, not the grapple ones yet, I got very close with him, gave him a lot of wins. I kept giving him wins every night, and I was like, hang on, I think I've got him winning this entire fucking thing. But like you said, that's possible, though. Someone like him could have an establishing G1, win a load of matches, and then you've got quarterfinal. You've got the semis, and you've got the fight. You've got, you know, places to knock them out. You know, in the semis, there he could theoretically, you know, batter everyone, and that's what we remember. But he's actually not a factor when it comes to actually being in the final. I think that could probably be true of a few people in this field. So yeah, it's like you say, it's actually for a year, it's wide open and hard to predict, unless, like you say, you go in the boring route and it's probably Naito.
And they're between generations of wrestlers, aren't they? You've now got all of the young lions they've had hope for, pretty much all back. And the fact that they're all back and in the mix, like, suggests they could go with someone. And it may not be someone who we instantly like. You wonder if Shota Umino goes deep. You wonder if Ren Narita goes deep in it. You wonder if this is the year where there's a kind of changing of the guard. And I get the impression that that's kind of been what they've been doing a lot of the year. So why wouldn't they do it here in the G1? Where, if anything, it's easier to build that star over a month with Yota Tsuji. You just have this guy go, he's on a fucking roll. Then you can tie in the whole LIJ dissension if you want to do that and all the rest of it. But I think at least there's interest in this. It hit me a few years back of just the ghetto style of booking for this. Now, I don't know if it's the style of booking or the people involved, but there's no Yujiro here. They're like, the levels, there's no Farley. The levels of shit aren't stinking up. They've just been replaced by young.
There is Chase Owens guys.
Yeah, and that's shit. Yano is Yano, and G1 is kind of not a G1 without Yano, because he gives you the breather when watching all of these kind of serious wrestling matches for this length of time. But yeah, Chase Owens stuff, obviously, though, I've no interest in watching that at all. But everyone else, all of the young guys, I'm intrigued.
And like you say, it's anyone's tournament. You know, that again, it's we're being pulled out of our comfort zone here. The quarterfinal, semi-final, final setup just makes things that just a bit more interesting. Like you say, gives you a bit more booking leeway to not be so safe. And there's not, and you know, it feels like there's a lot of matches, but each block hasn't got many matches because there's not many but guys in each block. You know, it's 7 matches each, isn't it? Rather than, you know, the crazy. Like I've seen people literally talk about, like, well, Ospreay could be in Blood and Guts because theoretically he's got 3 days off and he could travel to America and come back again. You know, imagine that in the middle of a G1 if he did that. That'd be, you know, that works a lot, but that'd be a lot even for him. But yeah, you know, it might be better for the wrestlers as well, which is a big thing. And yeah, like I also said, the A said he's surprised. I don't think it's Ospreay in proper coronation. He is my outside bet. I think I would potentially, because I'm doing multiple pick'ems. For the grapple ones, I'm probably going to end up doing that because it would involve in some form. I can't see Ospreay Sonada at Wrestle Kingdom, but I could absolutely, you know, see it being Okada and finally doing, you know, Ospreay going over him. So yeah, there's plenty of possibilities there, and yeah, I'm cautiously excited, JP, even if I'm going to be, you know, quite kind of conservative in my picks as to what I watch on some of these days. But I know you'll watch it all, so I'll look forward to your reviews on that. But and again, join if you want to make it more fun. Join our Pick'ems contest. I know the lads at Post have had one going a while, so they've got their one too. So obviously, do me and into multiple ones, and see how you get on. Spread your bets. There you go. But you'll be able to join our one for the first time ever as well. So loads of credit to Connor for setting that up for us. Brilliant. So, go on, JP.
I was just going to say one thing I did. It sounds like going back to talk about the New Japan Strong stuff on there. But there was two other very quick things I just wanted to make mention of at the end of it. I think it's worthwhile. One was the junior tag match, Catch 2-2, and Dan Maloney looking very handy, as we'll speak about him in Rev Pro as well. I thought that, there was a tag change, and you just think he's been there a month, and he's already a junior tag champion. He's got the look that he wants. Everything else, Clark Connors is a really tidy wrestler as well. But just a shout out for Catch 2-2. Should be Catch 22 because that's the Joseph Heller novel, but I digress. But the cracking read as well about the futility of war. Here, it wasn't about the futility of war. The war was well and truly earned, and it was cracking. And then the other one was Julia beating Willow. And I just wanted to say about that, the only issue I kind of had with it is, I big up Julia on here all the time, and there is that kind of massive star presence that she has. The match was fine, probably not as good. It's a little bit clunky. It looked good because she hit her finisher, lifting up Willow as well for that. This has been a really good run for Willow. It just gets into the place they want to be with when Mercedes Moné comes back, and they have her versus Mercedes Moné.
Do you think that'll be the Owen final? Maybe she comes out there because I think they've revealed something by not just kicking her out of the tournament, by going, the match will happen on Rampage, keeping Willow alive for a reason.
Yeah, they are. And do you know what? I think she's really good. I think she's one of the few people out of the women's division where there'll be a lot of talk about, say, Sky Blue. Sky Blue's not ready, and shouldn't be in that mix. Whereas Willow Nightingale winning it, I'm fine with it. But even in Japan, she was over with that crowd. She was they loved her, and she had that kind of infectious energy, and she's got a good enough offense because obviously it's really power based. It just makes her slightly more unique to a lot of wrestlers out there but she's just got that kind of likability factor. So I just wanted to give a shout out for those two matches for what was a really fun set of shows. And we talk about New Japan generally. It's nice to be positive about New Japan. It really is. And I generally feel the conversation that we're having here about New Japan doing different things, doing new and exciting things, livening up a G1. That's all good and long overdue.
Definitely. That's it. Connor sharing your compliments there, saying enjoying seeing Julia work with someone bigger than her for a style as well. Would assume, they fast tracked the way back to the original plan, which was, like I say, probably Mercedes involved. But I think they'll keep the main characters alive. And that's it. It was why not do that for a while? It was if it really was cold in the ring, that was one of the smarter things you'd see. So no, good stuff all around. And I think it actually works as a nice segue into the Brit Wres of the weekend. As you were complimentary of Dan Maloney there. The bit I did see, because I was at GPW, which I'll talk a bit more about in a minute. But we got back to the pub after, and the Ogdens had I think it was the Osprey match on their phone against Leon Slater, and the bit I saw of it was the finishing stretch, because they were live streaming, which is it's cool that they do, but it's hard to promise it, isn't it, with internet in venues and whatever. So I think they've been very smart about it. It's always a nice little bonus when you know what's on offer. But that's the bit I did see. Dan Maloney coming out and trying to get involved, and Osprey basically sending him over the guardrail, and they're clearly building something there. So I'm sure that's a directive, and Dan Maloney is clearly in safe hands here. But as I was at GRAPPL, that's the only thing I've seen of the Rev Pro York Hall show. But credit to them for streaming it live last night, and I believe you've caught up with at least a little bit of it.
Yeah, I have. And I have to say I caught up on it because the main reason I was able to catch up is I was at a Cubs and Beavers and Scouts barbecue tonight, and which was good, actually. Well, mate. This was they were encouraging us to go up for seconds and thirds. So I had 2 burgers and a hot dog. So I weren't complaining. Oh, it was cracking work. I was buzzing about that. That was really nice. So, and then And in the chat, Ewan had helpfully said, sort of like, these were the main matches to watch. So I kind of went on to it. And again, it's, you know what? They're trying live streams and they're trying this stuff. And it may not always be perfect, but by God, I appreciated it, being able to see it, because it was a big show for them. And lots of this, like sort of the undercard stuff, I haven't had a chance to see. So the main matches I've seen is first of all, Luke Jacobs versus Tom Lawler, because I'm a big Tom Lawler fan. I thought this was like good, stiff, like hot stuff from Luke Jacobs, who is a fucking unit at this stage in the proceedings. Look bigger than Tom Lawler as well. And that's a situation we haven't always seen when there's like the American import, they come in against the British guy and they just tower over them, or even the New Japan wrestler, and they just look bigger and they have that kind of credibility. Here, I thought like Luke Jacobs looked great. This was exactly the kind of stuff that I thought really, really worked. And I was just happy to see Luke Jacobs get the win there for one, because it made him feel like a big player. And that's really the theme of this show, is they've done, and this tells you about the kind of simplest, the booking, which is simple but straightforward and incredibly effective. Connor Mills, I haven't seen the match, but Connor Mills won the cruiserweight belt earlier in the show. I think you're on mute.
Sorry, I had nothing but good things about that one. Like, I had a couple of people say that was the match of the night. Him and Robbie X.
Which I'm delighted it went on first. I know it's a long match. I know it's 20 minutes. And I think there's been times where Connor Mills, I'm trying to think who was in there, and he did 20 minutes. He didn't need to do 20 minutes. But this is a cruiserweight title match. Robbie X has had a really good reign. And like just been that really good, like we mentioned before, that good veteran who has just been an absolute credit to Rev Pro. And it's just really good to see him kind of getting his dues. And for Connor Mills, this fits in perfectly with the much bigger storyline that they refer back to at the end, where this is his big moment, but that gets overtaken by Oku at the end, which I think is like, again, cracking, brilliant, cracking, like simple storyline development. But it isn't him coming out and attacking him afterwards and stuff like that. But the fact that he's won there, they're new tag champions in Subculture, which I saw sort of the last few minutes of that, them versus Greedy Souls, which is they're going into Great British Tag League.
Beyond that really well. Like, I think like Subculture are like, I think you've got to be careful. We talked about it last week. You've got to be careful with like what NXT UK cast-offs you're going to use. But like we said, we were raving about them on the Impact show. I really enjoyed them at the 229 last week. They feel fresh. They feel polished. They feel like a proper team. I'd go with it. And yeah, obviously Greedy Souls have done a great job as tag champions as well to kind of set that up. So yeah, it was a good bit of booking all around, I thought.
Cracking bit of booking. Like you mentioned about, you've got to be really careful about what can you do? And they're going to add something to it. Well, Subculture will, because Flash Morgan Webster has really developed. That time in NXT, he's really developed as a wrestler, and as a team, they're smooth as hell. And it's just like they're getting to show stuff that they were just doing in Enfield. They're actually able to do now in front of fans and in front of like kind of proper crowds. So that's a really good move. Greedy Souls lose nothing. I'd have an all-out war between the two, as like some mad brawl in Cardiff next time they're there. That feels like it's perfectly set up for that as well. Like playing off between them. And I think, Greedy Souls have looked really good as well. There was Zack Sabre Jr. versus Jordan Breaks, which was
that was great. Yeah, no,
that was great.
Was raving about that. Yeah.
Just it was stuff that took you by surprise. The way that Jordan Breaks was able to kind of stay with Zack, because that's really what the sort of storyline of the match. And if I can refer to, and I know he's in the chat as well, Ian, he's done a brilliant review on 411 as always of this show. So if you want to sort of like go through a lot of the other matches as well and sort of read the whole recap, go down and then go to Rev Pro on Demand to sort of watch the show. There's me giving them the plugs. I'm not getting paid anything for that, by the way, might I say, but it's well worth seeing. And I think, for this match, it was because it was something different, but it also had a pace to it. Which at the same time, in Jordan Breaks is that really good pickup where at the end of the night,
opponent for Zach.
Perfect opponent. Something different, follows the theme of younger guy against established star that Rev Pro do better than anyone else because they have good established wrestlers that come in, which leads on to a completely different type of match, but with the same kind of philosophy, which is the match you saw the ending of, Will Ospreay and Leon Slater.
Oh, I really want to see this full thing now that I'm home. Like, that was like, that, even just seeing the final like 5 minutes, I was like, yep, this if because I think the attendance looked decent from the people I know went down to York Hall, but I think obviously there were transport issues. Like even if I wasn't at GPW, I wouldn't have been able to go because the trains were off from Liverpool to London. I think there were different things affecting different people. But I feel like if I wasn't at GPW, I still would have found a way because I really wanted to see this match, like Leon Slater and Will Ospreay. Like, yeah, and every review I've heard of it sounds like I need to see this match at least in full at this point.
Oh, it's proper spectacle. I mean, there's a dive he did over the corner post, and he landed on his feet pretty much perfectly, landing on Ospreay.
That's drive, isn't it? Yeah, he loves that. He didn't do it at the 229. He's been a bit conservative with it. I like that though.
Good.
Puts it out on the big shows.
And he feels like a big deal already. He's already physically more developed, and he looks good. And I also think there's a good storyline that can play off with the fact that Callum Newman, who is now Will Ospreay's, what the role that Dan Maloney was as Will Ospreay's young boy, now he is in that role, and I think you can have that natural rivalry between him and Slater, where Slater is the kind of one on top, and Newman might have been like the wonder kids that Slater is now projected as. I don't know, maybe he's Emil Smith Rowe to Bukayo Saka of Leon Slater there, where he's not quite there. He's having to do a lot of under 21 Euros and stuff like that in the meantime to kind of build himself up. But at the same time, it's those, again, it lifted Slater up. It gives him credibility. It gives him stuff on that kind of highlight reel. And you just look at this guy and go, you just want him to stay here for a bit and just develop because he's carrying on like a really good path. And so, yeah. And then the main event, which again, really squeezing this one in, the right result. Like they had Oku win. Oku make Okan tap out. There was a lot of the storyline where he was working on his knee throughout the match as well. And it was the kind of big crowning moment. And I think the beauty of this is because Michael Oku, and I think wrongly, isn't booked by many sort of big promotions, he is the perfect guy to have as your champion and your figurehead, like of Rev Pro. He's just perfect for him for that. And I know there'll be people who just like, I always think of Andy and Jeff, bless them, where they're not enthused by Michael Oku because it feels like it's his promotion. But in many ways, I kind of feel like, yeah, he kind of should be. They're not negative. They don't hate him or anything else. But I know when he won the Revolution Rumble, it was like, oh, they thought that was kind of obvious direction. And maybe I'm being harsh here on Andy and Jeff, who aren't, they'll be listening.
No, they didn't mean
Oka. You saying I didn't say this.
They probably did. They probably meant Oka because, good Lord, I was happy this happened. I was punching the air when I found out because it was like
decent match, much better match than the RKJ match. Much better.
I think a lot of fans are like that. Okan's a character and fun to have around, but I don't think anybody was loving having him on top. And Michael Oku, outside of Ricky Knight Jr., has been the poster boy for Rev Pro. Like you say, you want, really the only direct competitor in Brit Wres right now is Progress when they, run shows, which is every now and again. And
I don't know you mean, I've never heard of it.
They tried using Ricky Knight Jr. And they avoided Oku for stupid reasons. But that allows you to, have your own stamp on it and have like Oku be a pure Rev Pro guy. Now, I've heard nothing but praise about the matches. I've seen some negativity towards the finish of like the women's match. I think a lot of people saying it was a bit overbooked, with the 4-way, and I'd have to probably see it with my own eyes to see what like the execution of that was. Definitely saw a bit of negativity towards Oku's opponent going forward being Trent Seven. Trent Seven doing the big heel turn and running off with the belt. What did you make of that scene? I've not seen it yet. Like I say, it feels like at least from our Discord, I think the wider feedback is overwhelmingly positive, match wise. But I did see a bit of criticism of, like I say, the women's finish and that booking particularly. What do you think of Trent Seven, world title contender at this point in his grand old post NXT UK career?
If Oku's beating him, then I'm fine with it. As a development tool, I'm less. That's where I'm more bothered by it because it clearly then puts the Rev Pro belt kind of, and it's difficult. Like in an ideal world, he probably for that copper box show should be taking on someone from New Japan and beating them, or some big kind of that to try and establish it. But who's going to be willing to do that? Who are you going to get to do that? There's political machinations with this stuff as well.
Well, it's like a lot of people in our Discord are like, oh, it should be insert AEW again. Like, I don't think Tony Khan is letting any of his roster work the Rev Pro show on the Saturday, I'm afraid, folks. So, you know, it might be a 229 show. It might be a couple box show. It was like when I came out of that last 229 show going, there's two classes of NXT UK guy, I think. Like, there's the guys who you're just not going to touch because they've got that NXT UK stink on them. And we don't have to bury anyone. We all know those names. And then there's guys like Subculture who it's like, oh, you know what? These are lads who, you know, take pride in the work, put the effort in, and, you know, they're still going to give you a great match on your card, and they've got that bit of name value when I'll use them. Trent 7, I came out of that 229 feeling somewhere in the middle, going, he's got that name value, but I can't help but look at him and go, okay, you've reached NXT UK now, mate. What else are you gonna do? Like, are you really happy, you know, doing random spot shows for a Rev Pro? Not just Rev Pro, anyone. I just look at him and go, like, does he have the motivation? You know, I was you know, watching him out there with Ricky's uncle, is it Roy? At the 229. I kind of just going, you know, like,
it was Zach night, wasn't it?
Zach, sorry, that's what I had to say, Zach. Yeah. It's all these nights, they get confusing. But, like, I was going, I don't know how much effort you're really getting out of post NXT UK Trent 7. But then again, you know, he's overdoing ROH, so he's flying back and forward, so he's still, you know, staying involved and stuff like that. I think that's what it's going to be. It's the level of motivation you got out of him. I'm not excited about him as like if he's going to get like this big heel run or whatever, and he's going to be, you know, the big bad for Michael Oku. I feel like Copper Box is just that step too far for a match like that. But again, while we can all dream about what we want a Copper Box, the reality might be that that's, you know, who else do you put Oku in with, really? Yeah, I don't know. I'm splitting it. I'll have to see it with my own eyes because I've seen a fair amount of negativity. Not like to overwhelm the show. I think overwhelmingly it's positive feedback on the matches, but that is the talking point I've seen a little bit of.
If the overall story is that Michael Oku is the new face of British wrestling and he's beating these kind of guys that were part of Brit Wres past, then I'm okay.
The ghosts of Brit Wres past. Is that what that's what the grey beard's for with Trent, isn't it? Yeah. That's what we're building to.
Then I'm kind of all right with that, to be honest with you, on there. As Benji decides to do a run into that was that loud sigh into that. It wasn't me having some sort of heart attack, in case anyone was wondering. Yeah, I suppose, like, in terms of it was very obvious he was going to turn heel. I mean, I knew it was happening anyway because he was the one who stayed behind the ring afterwards and then delivered the lariat and then sort of just legged it out of there as well. After they'd done the great foreshadowing with Connor Mills coming out to the stage looking shocked after Oku wins and everyone's there lifting him up on there. Amira Blair doing her part as always, makes Michael Oku feel like a bigger part of the act. He just has to. If Trent 7 wins, that's when I'll be annoyed. If he's there to take the loss and he beats this guy who is seen as this, you know, this focal part of NXT UK, then I'm fine with it. We move on.
I'm gonna say that wasn't the only thing kind of coming out of the show. We had so we got what Zach's bringing in Vegeta, is he? Is that apparently happening? It seems to be a thing.
I'll say Vegeta, not like asshole Vegeta from Noah. No, not him.
the one that begins with K. Yeah. So apparently it's him and it's JJ Gale, isn't it? And if Gale gets a match with Zach if he wins, so yeah, yes. Zach's got his own young boy, which kind of makes sense. And obviously, yeah, they also did the whole thing with Ricky Knight Jr. and Zach as well, which sounds like that's a good match for a Ricky Knight Jr. Like I was saying last week, you want to see him back from injury and fresh and ready to go. You know, yeah, outside of Ospreay, Zach's the biggest match I think you can get from a Rev Pro card.
I think so for this. I mean, I think for that Copper Box show, they've still got room to kind of pack it out. And I know there are various kind of plans in place and everything else, but they've got those kind of relationships, and I'd be kind of bullish they'll put on some like really good stuff on the undercard. And I if they follow the pattern of this show, which is younger Rev Pro guy against more established guy, then I'm fine with that because I kind of think that's what the promotion is. And probably
that's what a Copper Box is. It's an anniversary show like the other one I was at, and on an anniversary show, you want to pay mine to the past and you want to pay mine to the future. So that makes sense, doesn't it? I wouldn't. be shocked to see like some older names pop in, but also at the same time you get the newer names in a stronger position just by virtue of being on such a big card.
And they've set up those younger wrestlers, I think, in a really good way. You've got Jordan Breaks as your wrestler, you've got Leon Slater as your flyer, you've got Oku as your kind of like babyface champ. You've got Ricky Knight Jr., who I would fully expect to turn heel, should be the one to take the belt off Michael Oku, and they have a whole chase process with him, and he'll get all the knights involved in his stable. That for me is like where I want to see that story going, because I think that's good. I think that's just good, sensible storytelling. I know this is a suggestion I gave to him in the pub, but I'll still stick that it was a good thing to do. Yeah, you've got your tag team.
It might be happening now.
Division in there. You've got all of these good, like, and Luke Jacobs is your Hoss. You've got all these really interesting elements you've got in there. Yeah, the women's division is probably the one, and I haven't seen the match, is the one where there is that kind of mess, where they've only got round to unifying the titles, and you want there to be that same sort of clarity there. If I were them, and you can do it, try and bring in a Joshi wrestler. Try and bring in, if you can bring in a Julia, for example, there's a uniqueness to that, and she's got returning to the city of her birth in London, so hey, writes itself.
Could be something. I do think, now that we've got not out the way, but your horse done, I think we're gonna, because that is something I have said. I feel like it's gone off the boil a little bit. The copper box, it's kind of not the front of mind it should be on such a big weekend. I think it can now, as the card takes shape and we learn more about like who is available, who isn't. I think that's going to happen absolutely. So yeah, be exciting to see what the build.
Jacobs there.
Yeah, Connor, I'll take that. That's a match, isn't it? Jacobs has got the size now. He probably be dwarfing Ishii. I think at this point in his career. Yeah.
Like Ishii Volta all over again. If Walter was from Manchester, which would have made some fun skits.
Might have better chemistry than them two as well, because it didn't really work, did it? But we'll see. But yeah, a lot of chat there. Yeah, Will talking about Trent kind of being known as a tag guy, and yeah, there is that as well. Will says here, James, you apparently once said on a BWE, Trent was part of the young generation that was succeed Zack Sabre Jr., Will Ospreay, and Marty. So there we go. That's kind of happening in a way. It's coming through. Finally. So yeah, I suppose moving on from there, in a related note, same night I was at a different Brit Wres show. That's why I haven't seen this one. I couldn't watch the pay-per-view. I was at GPW's 20th anniversary show, as we built up a bit last week, and I did in the interview with Johnny Brannigan, the Versus, which isn't out of date. We had a great chat about all things GPW over the last 20 years and what it's like to book at a British wrestling promotion. So still recommend people check that out. But yeah, we were talking on the pre-show, me and Matty, and our day out in Wigan. We talked all that. I'll give the brief version on this version of the show. In that, we made sure we had the pie, because it's not Wigan if you don't have a pie, and we had a couple of great pints at Wigan Central on the day as well. Went to the venue with a whole cast of characters. It was like my Twitter feed in real life. It was the Ogdens were there, Ben was there, Brit Wres away there. He's often confused with me. He's Ben, not Benno. Alan Sheepshot turned up and came and met us for a pint. Chris Linney. It was a who's who, a great cast of characters along with me, Gareth, and Matty. We had a really great day out, and then we got to head down to the show itself, and it was kind of exactly what it needed to be. Like, you see that put like photos out there from the show, and I kind of said the same thing to Johnny. I knew going in, even just walking into that building, the Monaco Ballroom in Hindley, where I did have a couple of matches a long time ago, but mostly for me, my experience with that building is going as a fan, and I've been going as a fan before I trained to wrestle. That's when I first met Ben Brit Wres away days, Future Shock, and I've been going for years and years after. We're talking it was 2007, the last time I was in a ring. And then I've been going as a fan since about 2009. But no matter what, every time I go to that venue, I walk through that door and it's butterflies immediately, JP. Every time. I just get that feeling. It's like, but I feel like I'm going to be on in the main event or something like that. Not that I ever was, but you know what I mean? I just feel like, it really, I'm like, Gareth and Matty were laughing at me because, not that my eyes were getting watery, but maybe I was a bit misty-eyed a little bit. But it was just amazing to be back in there again, thinking we'd never be in that venue again, thinking GPW might well be done, after the pandemic and everything, and not having run a show in a couple of years. But yeah, the venue looked amazing, as Matty was saying on the pre-show. Like they lit it up in a way that I've not seen that venue look. They've got a bongos bingo going on Fridays, Saturdays there, JP. Apparently it's a big money spinner, hence why the GPW show was on the Sunday. So they just must have made some upgrades to the building with all that big dollar coming through. Do you have bongos bingo down there? Is it just a Liverpool thing, or bingo for adults? Basically, you drink a bit between games and dance on the table.
Yeah. Bingo got big, but funny enough, we were at Laser Quest. When was it? Saturday morning, and I noticed that the bingo place had gone. The Kassam near the Oxford ground. I was like, what? I was like, I thought bingo was doing all right. I thought there was very little else going right in this country at the moment. But I thought bingo was one of those things that was somehow surviving it.
Still doing good. No, at least in Wigan anyway, and it's still real
good at Wigan.
It's always the way.
When you say that, all I think of is that Peter Kay thing it was called. There was an episode of him with the bingo caller. No, not Phoenix Nights. Before Phoenix Nights, created the characters and there was a bingo hall, and he played multiple characters, including the bingo caller. Yeah, exactly. Very Paul Heyman-esque.
But yeah, like I was saying, it's got the building's got such a history of like 20 years almost of GPW shows. Where Alan Cheapshot unearthed the poster from a 1970s wrestling show with Dynamite Kid on. Same venue, Monaco Ballroom, same name, and I bet you it was set up quite similarly to this. But yeah, it was really like they had like all these you've seen me photos of all these benches out, which were the bongos bingo benches, but it made for this really cool atmosphere. Everyone was on like these benches kind of surrounding the ring, and yeah, it was the perfect like anniversary show you could do. Like a 20-year anniversary show. What you want to do? You want to have some names in the past on there, a few surprises, which they did. And like we were saying with Rev Pro, you want to put over the young lads, and you want to establish, well, what's this promotion going to be going forward? Because got a bit of a scoop on that versus Johnny saying they were going to be going forward and having 4 shows a year, and that's probably about right for a regional promotion on a nice Sunday sleepy afternoon in Wigan. And they set a lot up for that as well. Like I say, I'm running through the show quickly. I mean, I thought, like I say, gave it some more extended thoughts with Matty earlier, but Becky Barnes and Sandy Beach was the opener. Sandy Beach is one that I had on we want to watch a column in Fighting Spirit mag. He looked really good. He's not a babyface you see many other places. The Sandy Beach character is a bit daft. He's what the name sounds like, comes out with an inflatable shark, and he's got I don't know, like Hawaiian print like pants and jacket on, but he looked really good as a baby. He's got loads of potential, and that potential is still there. It just hasn't really been capitalized anywhere, I would say, other than like here, where he looked really good. Really enjoyed that as an opener. Ellie Austin and Lana Austin. It was fun to see Lana Austin outside of certain other scenarios where there might be a certain wrestling promoters who make sure they're always in the same frame as her. But seeing her with her brother against the Merseyside Mercenary Squad, Dan Evans and Scott Oberman, that was a fun match. I will say, like as Johnny said on that podcast, Scott Oberman's a name people should keep in mind. Really good heel, a lot of charisma. Presence is probably the word we keep using when we talk about him. He continues to look really good, and I think he's someone who could probably get picked up, have a good career in other places as well as here. I thought that was really good. Martin Kirby and Sonna Derson was in the first half of the show, and that was reliable first half main event. Yeah. Martin Kirby, like that fella, like he went into the Hall of Fame that GPW have, where it's it's like. But I think Johnny himself has gone in. They put in like the stars of who've been important to GPW over the 20 years. He's someone who, again, as we talked about in that podcast, he had, from my memory of him was seeing him firstly front row at shows with Ben, Brit Wres away days. You get a lot of mentions today, and seeing him as a fan. Then my second memory of him, or my main memory of him, is seeing he was the bloke who brought the ring. Like he was on the ring truck when I first saw Martin Kirby, and then all of a sudden he was on shows, and then all of a sudden he was one of the best wrestlers in the Northwest, and then England outright, and he got his little run in Dragon Gate, didn't he? But he retired, and then he's came back, which is great to see. But Yeah, he's one of those who's he's so good and so reliable in like a situation like this. And Gareth won't let me get past this match without mentioning Sonny Derson, who, yeah, he might be semi-famous. He had a squash match with Eric Rowan on a Raw that they paid off with a rematch in Future Shock when Eric Rowan was knocked back down to the Indies at Full of a Wrestling a couple of years ago. Wasn't great, but he's good. Like, he's another one who you could maybe expect to see in more places as the years go on. But that was a really good first half main event. They kicked off the second half with a bit of a nostalgia kind of thing, with a lot of old characters from the past coming out, like Dick Feelgood, Melanie Price doing like the whole old master plan gimmick, and then old baby faces like Damon Lee, who, when I talk about my training days and talk about my GPW days, he's a massive part of the aesthetic of GPW. I was shocked he wasn't booked already, and he didn't come up in my chat with Johnny. I genuinely didn't know he was going to be there, and he got a massive pop when he came out. That was cool. Saw Jumping Jimmy Jackson. We used to be in a tag team called Track and Field in GPW, which is one of their great gimmicks. Mike Track and Ian Field was the team.
That is.
I know you wrote about that at the time. Oh. He's more of a complete wrestler now. He's more of a wrestler's wrestler, flyer type, but he's very good. Big Joe Guns, one of your favorites. He did doing his new Joe Blazer gimmick. Jury's still out on that, I think. I think he got Big Guns Joe over to a level, and he became a meme. We were talking about it. We recorded Graps and Claps after the show, and we were kind of talking about that on the Ogdens, saying, well, yeah, but he tried to go serious with it, and that didn't work. So maybe this is more in his wheelhouse now, doing a more of a comedy character, if not going fully back to the Crash Holly knockoff stuff. So we'll see. A lot of talent there. I always feel bad with him. I said that on Graps and Claps. Like, he became a butt of a joke along with the Lycosses, or as I affectionately call them, the Lycos twins, as far as being on every Brit Wres show. But there was a reason, because he's very talented and he got that gimmick over, and fresh coat of paint. We'll see how he does.
Yeah.
Another note, I thought Isaac North looked good in that match as well. Great monster. But yeah, good to see Mel and Dirk back involved in things. The other big note of the show, like the last two matches, RP Davis beat Dylan Roberts, my old tag team partner.
Yeah.
That counts. And Sam GRAPPL beat Joey Hayes for the title. More on that in a second. RP Davis and Dylan Roberts was head and shoulders the match of the night, I thought. Dylan's great. Like, he was always good. He was a natural when we first started training together. In the nicest possible way. He always made me look bad. As a team, like, we do, like, we both go back and forth doing, like, both do arm drags, and his look 40 times better than mine. We both do drop kicks. At a point when we were a team, one of our moves was a double drop kick. He looked like Dynamite Kid. I look like Davey Boy Smith doing a drop kick, which is not a compliment. It wasn't something Davey Boy did well. And it was always like that, and it's no surprise he's still going, all these 18, 19 years later. And he's a standout in the Northwest, and a veteran who never really gets his due. Silky smooth, brilliant at laying out matches, and brilliant at, like, doing that quote-unquote work rate match that's going to get the hardcore fans like us going. But doing it in a way that, like, I thought RP Davis looked brilliant. Like, people probably heard the name before. He's an ex-boxer who has a bit of a following. There was like 20, 30 people in the venue walking around with his, like, fight camp or whatever it is, like, his brand on their t-shirts. Like, he brings a motley crew with him, no matter where he goes. And Johnny had said that, and it's absolutely true. When I last saw him at TNT, it was like, oh, here's an ex-boxer. He does some punches, and is he going to be a wrestler? Is he not? He's early days in his career. Who knows? He felt like a proper wrestler. Like, in this the highest compliment I can pay. He fit in there with Dylan Roberts. The extra bits of his game were there. He just felt more complete. Still doing the boxing gimmick, and throwing a few digs here and there because he should, because that's what he's known for. But yeah, I thought he looked really good. He's really come on a lot, and I think I could see him in bigger places now, especially with the on a level name he's got that you could use in different places. He's someone the Ogdens mention a lot. I'm sure you've heard the name.
Oh, I have. I've seen pictures of him where he looks the part, and I think, like you say, it's the fact he seems very keen, but it's also he's been working these much smaller shows, as he should do if you're looking to have longevity and learn. And that sounds like what it is from the first time you've seen him, he's actually learned.
Yeah,
it's actually and that's to have this.
He's got a good head on his shoulders. From everyone I speak to who knows him, they always say that he's got a good head on his shoulders. So it was a great show to establish that, and then the main event, Sam Gradwell and Joey Hayes. Obviously, Joey Hayes has been around a long time. He was on the first show with I believe Damon Lee and Johnny Brannigan himself, or the other men from this show were on the first show. Back in the day, he was always the Joey knows how to work type of thing. He's the smoothest. He's the worker's worker type. It was him and back in the day, CJ Banks were kind of the two names that would always kind of come to mind from that era. So understandable why he'd be in this main event slot, and Sam Gradwell being in there with him. Sam was like, he's an NXT UK name because I think that's the only place people know him from. But he's got a great look. He's very good at the character stuff, all that stupid yogurt stuff that kind of got over to a point where he was doing NXT UK, and his promos are strong. He's every bit. The only knock I can give him, he's every bit a WWE wrestler. And if not NXT UK, you watch him and go, he's fantastic here, and he probably should be somewhere. But where, great. If he's on all 4 GPW shows, these next 4 shows they're going to do, perfect. And I think he's, putting him over and making him the champion was the perfect way to puncture, to emphasize the 20 years of GPW. Got a great, promo at the end of it, putting over Johnny and putting over the company for saving, his life. I think in as many words he said when he was only a 17-year-old coming into training, and gave him purpose, and it got him as far as, WWE. I know, Regal took a big interest in him at a point as well. He's just one of those. It's like, he's got all this potential, all this, just all this poise, all this confidence. But where? It's like, but where? What's the use case? And I can't quite underline what it is. Maybe he's gonna surprise and wind up somewhere you kind of don't expect him to. But he came across like in this environment in GPW in Hindley in the Monaco Ballroom like a gigantic main event star. And maybe there's money on the table there for somebody.
Yeah, do you know what? He's a fresh enough face. He's not overexposed. It's not like, in NXT, there was an element of prominence he'd had, or he'd established himself. I mean, this is such a minor level because no one was watching it. But that's helping him round out as a performer. Again, it's go back to Rev Pro. That's where you feel like at this point in time, if he's wrestling in the UK and this is where he's going to be based, and if they're running the Northwest, you'd be a fool not to bring him for Manchester, see what the reaction is. He looks the part. He'll have worked, and there's stuff you can do with him that's not been kind of seen to give him that kind of indie cred, dare I say it, which is always a thing that'll probably help.
Yeah, but at the same time, like him being that makes him something unique for a GPW, because that's the biggest compliment I could give this show. Like, it felt like a GPW show. It felt like the best of the past, with all those names I've mentioned before, a splattering of like the present-ish and a splattering of the future as well. It was just a big celebration of like the 20 years of the company. Like, I did a soppy tweet where I took a picture of the venue and just like literally it was home, like dramatic Benno, but like I meant it. It felt like home when I was there. A million people I've seen use that word, down to like Ben and other people like that, as to what it felt like being in there. It was just the nicest, most like, all of us kind of coming together and being in the same build, and me catching up with a few faces, or even just saying hi to a couple of people I hadn't said hi to in a while. A lot of the same fans, that you've seen there over the 20 years as well. Again, I'm very biased, considering like I see it as my home promotion. I do see it as home, but like the world they've built there, just in that one building, and it was, it's that what it used to be, that one night a month. Maybe now it's 4 nights a year. But when you walk in, it's like that universe like clicks back into existence. And it's like, oh, okay, we're back where we were the last time we were here. And it's like they've created an entire world with a roster full of, heels down to like a Mickey Barnes, who I mentioned in the opener. He's like a Mega Slam guy now, and you can see every bit of it, but he's like a great like underguard here. You've got all these characters that the crowd just they know, from years of getting to know them, and Martin Kirby being the Hall of Fame guy and being the alleged local babyface, which he's definitely not. Down to like Luke Marsden, who's like the ex Big Brother star, who was once the GPW ring announcer. He got involved in a big angle there. He was great. He's somebody like people know locally. It's a local wrestling promotion for local people, but everybody who comes, I had mates from work.
Sound like Royston Vasey wrestling.
mates from work came with me to the shows loads of times, and walked away just loving every minute of it. And that's what it is. Like when you, like I say, the Ogdens go all over, and it's one of their favorites. I think Garrett's definitely going to come back as well. So yeah, made up to it. I've got to be there for 20 years, and yeah, definitely going to be there for the next 4. And yeah, we'll see, see what comes after that. You'd love it. You'd have a good time.
Oh, do you know what? And again, when I looked at the setup and I saw how much fun you guys had, and the fact you were going to play pool beforehand as well, I was like, oh, this sounds like an absolute belter of a day. And it just sounded like they do all the things right. And like I said, the presentation of it, which is half the battle for it, is really good. And 4 shows a year sounds like smart business.
That's it. And that's it. Those types of motions are kind of, it's probably more than progress, but I've done a lot of that digging for today. But
again, I don't know.
There we go. We think the next show's in October. The ring announcer kept, to answer Connor, the ring announcer kept saying it was sometime, I think the 7th maybe, but it's not official. I don't know. We know the official day of the next show, but I'm sure they kept saying they put it out on social media, so we will see. But yeah, it was a cracking day out, and like I say, me, Matty, and the lads had a banger, and I'm still hungover today, so that says everything. Takes a lot to get me to the make, and yeah, a wrestling show is usually the thing that'll do it, but. Yeah, before we get out of here, just I suppose one more big subject we got before we clean up a couple of minor items. We did say we'd catch up a bit on Dark Side of the Ring, JP. We've had a week off from it, which has probably been helpful for me and you to catch up, because we had the Matt Bourne episode and the JYD episode. What did we say was coming up next for Dark Side?
Adrian Adonis is on tonight.
Is on tonight. Oh, right, okay. Yeah, you're fully caught up? What have you made of it so far out of those 2? Any highlights?
I mean, highlights. They're quite depressing stories, if we're going to be frank about both of them. The Matt Bourne one I didn't know about as much, and it's like, I think the stuff, like particularly with it takes a very weird turn at the end, is what I would say, with the stuff about his ex-wife and his daughter being convinced he was murdered by his current girlfriend and the rest of it, and then them kind of quizzing her on stuff and her being very shifty when talking about it. I was like, I wasn't quite prepared for that as much as anything, because it had followed the kind of traditional path as it would do. It's sort of, he's a wrestler at a certain point in time, he's completely all over the place as well, but then you think about Doink and you realize, and I hated the character. I was never a fan. However,
even heel Doink
was at least interesting, and I think that's the thing that he kind of gave. And there is the thing, and Mick Foley says it in there as well, where you could tell that the Matt Bourne version of Doink is the best version compared to I'm trying to think of the other people who took on them. I want to say Ray Apollo was one of them. Like various kind of like other people who just weren't as good, like especially with the fake Doink stuff in there. And it follows the path of him going kind of off the rails. Slightly feels like, is he getting himself back together and then he's dead young? this is what happens. Which the second one with Junkyard Dog
interview you, mate.
Huh?
Didn't need to tell the whole story, just interview you. Yeah, he lived, he was Doink, and then he was dead.
He was a wrestler in the 80s. He took loads of drugs. He didn't look after himself at all, and he was dead in his early 50s. We know this story. It's just, what age range is it? Is it late 30s? Is it in the 40s? Is it 50s? Who can tell?
It was because that one, and we can get into the JYD one, but the Matt Bourne one as well, same thing. And it's like, I walked out of it thinking it was the best episode of the season, despite it being that, that trodden path, like the path we got on the JYD one. I was like, oh, heel Doink, I think, was a really good character. I loved all that. I loved the story about how, we kept hold of the rights for it, despite the fact, he kept trying to use it when he left, and then, he fought Vince on it, and then managed to get rights in perpetuity for the use of the character on WWF TV, and he got his royalties, which was an interesting story. The Born Again stuff in ECW, I found that fascinating. I want to do a whole deep cut on that. I thought that was brilliant. I thought, as far as going on the indies and not just cashing in, which he did do a lot of, but actually trying to do something. And I say indies, ECW, I'm doing that as a service, but going out there and doing something that wasn't on the level of what WWF was, and trying to, ignite that creative spark and be an interesting character. I found that fascinating. I really want to dig deeper on it. And I found all the family stuff fascinating as well. Like when it turned out that it was like his kids thought that it was his partner. He wasn't an overdose, and it was his partner he was with who's responsible for him dying. And then she's on there defending himself, and they go back to his daughter, and the daughter's like, she's talking shit. She let him die, and then they're going over like the 911 call and the fact that she didn't make it till the morning. This sounds like gruesome stuff. It is, because it's Dark Side of the Ring, but it's fucking utterly compelling stuff. And I walked out like, I've saw a really good, interesting documentary where I learned some things. And then everybody on the internet, on the Discord, told me, yeah, Benno, but they left out this, and this horrendous thing that he did in his life. And that's the problem when you've got a man's family involved in it to this degree, helping with the documentary and giving their side, despite it being Dark Side of the Ring and despite that stuff being extremely heavy. I think they were quite selective with what they allowed to make the final cut of this documentary. And if I didn't know that, I would have said this was an 8, 9 out of 10 episodes. And then I was like, oh, maybe it's more of a 6 or 7.
I'm probably not as high on you on it, but I think it's probably not knowing that much about Matt Bourne really kind of made it that bit more interesting. I have to say, generally on the whole, this has been a good season of Dark Side of the Ring. These are slightly like, we're into lesser known stories, but it's less wacky. And it is much more like the folk. Like, I thought they did well with the Candido episode on here as well. I mean, obviously they're finishing off with the Marty Jannetty episodes. Christ knows what they're not going to cover in that. Who can tell with this one? But like I say, there's the problem with the hagiography of when you talk to the family, and you think you've got the potential here to be so deferential to what they want that actually you're not really telling the story. And I probably wasn't as, I was more like, this has taken a twist when it came on to stuff about like with his girlfriend and stuff like that. Oh, hello there. Sorry, I just decided to cut me out there. You thought, no, I'm not having this Matt Bourne slander.
I'll do that when the MLW
that's the video viewers. Oh yeah, that's your piss break. I'll be quick about the MLW stuff, I promise. But yeah, it is. I suppose these are very much peas in a pod. These two documentaries as well. To go into the Junkyard Dog one as well, where although the Junkyard Dog one, again, it felt like there's stuff from that they've taken out. It felt like this is a much bigger career, and I suppose it's like you get a taste of it. But I suppose he's a much more interesting. I'd say much more interesting figure. He's a much bigger figure than Matt Bourne in wrestling history. And there's that point in time in Louisiana where he was massive in a territory system, but he couldn't wrestle, which is a fundamental flaw in wrestling, really. If all he can do is headbutts and a dance on the apron, you kind of, there's not a whole lot going to be else that's going on there.
A lot of money was made with that, though,
Oh, yeah.
That's the lads in Mid-South.
Yeah, they did well. And again, these are the kind of stories you want on there, because he is he's that big, he's one of those big regional stars who ended up under Vince, who never made it. And that's partly like, you kind of look at him and you look at he wasn't the tallest, but in that era of burly chested fellas in Mid-South, he fits in perfectly. In the bodybuilder physique world of WWF, he's just an anachronism. He's something that belongs to the past. And so I remember in WrestleMania 3 for this, and I knew that he'd gone off the rails. There was something about New Jack wanting to kill him, which seems like a bit much there.
Yeah. Oh, has New Jack killed JP? Maybe.
I think I suppose a bit more formulaic, isn't it? Sorry if I'm breaking up. For some reason, Chrome's going mental on me.
Well, I enjoyed it as a show. It definitely wasn't as. It was a well-trodden story, but I think the interesting stuff was that there was this, complete, because my knowledge of him is one, seeing the WWF and later WCW version, which are just kind of sad versions of Junkyard Dog to get to see. And obviously you're seeing an even more limited, man who's pretty much a shell of himself by the time you get to the WCW stuff when you see him there. So I've seen that. And then the other exposure I had to him was through Meltzer. And Meltzer constantly calling him the junk food dog, which was a big take that he that and the Ultimate Warrior one where they call him the Anabolic Warrior. They're like two of Dave's famous lines that he constantly have in the Observer, and that's pretty much what he was to me. It was like he's a joke in like hardcore wrestling circles, and then when I saw him, it was like, who's this legend? But I would say, like, having actually seen him here and seeing like him in his pomp, seeing how over he was, seeing how much money he made for Mid-South, and how gigantic of like a mini celebrity he was in that part of the world. Like, it was genuinely impressive to see, and it was one of those things where you see him as a big star way more because you're seeing, oh, that's what he meant to that area. Oh, that's why was so fucking bitter when he left, you know. And I 100% believe, you know, both sides of the story in a way. I believe that Bill Watts was, you know, I believe he really did love him and was genuinely sad that he left and genuinely sad that he was betrayed. But I also 100% believe JYD probably overheard him saying a slur about him, and he probably said them, you know, based on the shoot interviews he's done and other stories you hear about him, under his breath, you know, 30 times a day, and he probably wasn't a very nice bloke at all, you know, to say the very least. And I know JR is going to defend him as much as he can, but I still found it interesting to see that other side of it. Like, I wouldn't paint it the way Dark Side of the Ring did, where like, oh, Bill wasn't a racist because you really like JYD. I was like, no, Bill was a racist. Bill just also liked money, and then Bill found out that it's like one of those, you know, you watch like a Channel 5 documentary and they make like people who hate immigrants live with an immigrant for a week. Like, it was like that. It was like, oh, this is like, oh, he's a bloke like me, and he's actually really nice, and then they actually became friends. I think both things can be true. I think he's still a monster, but he also, you know, did befriend JYD and genuinely was, you know, devastated when he left. It was that part of it I actually found very interesting.
Oh yeah, as well. And sorry for the technical thing. For some reason, my computer decided to go bananas. I mean, normally does towards the end of the spotlight. That stuff is interesting on what he meant and his place in kind of like wrestling history and everything else. And it's mad how the downfall is so quick and quite sudden, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because it is like WCW, he's a jobber, and then he's kind of a mess, pretty much.
Turning up to indie bookings just to make a bit of a wedge to literally go buy drugs like there and then. Like, you hear that. You hear like he was Ted DiBiase's best man, wasn't he? Which shocked me. Like, I didn't know they were that close. And then
fight with Jim Duggan?
Yeah.
Was that Matt Bourne, actually? I'm confusing that.
That's Matt Bourne, yeah. But Ted DiBiase is like, when I saw him later, it's like he wasn't the same person. You know what I mean? I couldn't have reconnected them because he wasn't the same bloke there. Whereas, you know, while he spent a lot of money on drugs, like Chris just mentioned in his pomp, he used to charge the ladies $100 to have a night with him, you know? Million miles away from that world.
And bring Tony Atlas with him.
I'm not sure I believe
and
that's
say,
true, but
all he's interested in is your feet. And he just went, well, of course. I've never seen a man just revel in the fact that he's got a foot fetish more than Tony Atlas. Like, it's just like, right, okay, that's your thing.
In the 80s, they were dripping in feet, mate. They were everywhere they went, wall to wall feet. Megastars. But it is. Yeah, it is, and that's why it's Dark Side of the Ring. You know, it is. You know, at the end of it, you still walk out with a bit of a, you know, real like a bad taste in your mouth, don't you? Because it's a grimy, horrible business that eats and swallows people like this.
It's what this show is. Like you said, it's Dark Side of the Ring, not light and funny side of the ring, is it?
That'd be a different show.
It is. Wrestler retires, settles down, sets up a business. The end. Like, that's not really an exciting narrative for us to follow, is it?
No. But I thought back-to-back couple of good episodes, and I'm looking forward to what's to come. And it feels like we're building up to the Marty Jannetty crescendo. If we feel grubby now, JP, we're going to feel really fucking grubby after that episode.
Bash of the Beach 2000 won't exactly make us feel particularly cleaner, given the nature, and it will feel like a very silly episode by comparison.
That'll feel light. By comparison, 100%, light and colourful. Looking forward to that.
Bam Bam Bigelow on a personal level, because when we did like Best Big Men, he is just like one of favourite wrestlers. He's one of mine.
Oh,
and it is.
I'll come out of that one to watch more Bam Bam again, because he's another one who, like, I know from WWF and WCW and ECW, obviously, but you know, there's all the Japan stuff I could absolutely do with mine and
absolutely
at some point. But yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, before we go, JP, I was going to say openly. Anything else you've seen, mate? But I think I know what the anything else is this week.
I haven't seen all of it, but MLW was back this weekend with a 2-hour special. So I think they were taping TV there as well. And he's an economical man, if nothing else. With this,
fucking worker, isn't he?
He really is. Sorry. Like, so the big story out of this is, and I suppose the main event And that's really the only place to kind of go to, which is Hammerstone. He's been champion for like near 2 years at this stage. And Alex Kane, who had done a very good job over time of building up his Bombier Fight Club. He's got a charisma to him. He can cut a promo. And he's, even though he doesn't necessarily look the part because he's quite small and Hammerstone dwarfed him. And I don't think Hammerstone's particularly tall either. It's suplex finishes. It's very Taz related. And this crowd fucking loved him. They were chanting Bombier, and they might have been chanting even more when they found out who the Bombier Fight Club's big money backer is. What I'm assuming, like sat in a seat hostage video like thing where Don King turned up, or the ghost of Don King turned up, saying about like he is Alex Kane's gonna what is it? Bombier, he's behind them, and Alex Kane's gonna be the new MLW champion, and he just him going Bombier, Bombier, as if he's back in the room with the dictator of Zaire, Mobutu, when he set up the Rumble in the Jungle fight there as well. And they had that, but the whole crowd was chanting Bombier. And as a match, as a professional wrestling match, this was actually quite good. From what I've seen of it, like I'm talking 3.5 is what I'd probably go. It's long. They built up as a big match, but the crowd absolutely loved Alex Kane. They wanted him to win because Alex Hammerstone had that John Cena heat, like he really did, and that was just cracking to see. And there was a good few false finishes and the rest of it. He managed to kick out of his like sort of pendulum finisher and the rest of it and everything else, and he won the title. And clearly, you know, Alex Hammerstone turned heel and the rest of it. And then about 40 people ran in the ring, all part of this Bombier Fight Club. And I thought, how many of them is Court actually paying? Maybe the big tall bloke who's with him as well. He used to wrestle in Chikara. I think it's Blaster McMassive or something like that. Like that bloke is there. But it was lively. And the whole thing was sponsored. You know, when we read out some of those betting odds, and you're like, where the hell do we get it from? It's all Bet Online. They were presenting themselves. They were the sponsor of this. They were everywhere. So it was great in a AAA doing ads for petrol type way. Bet Online. I don't know.
Right. Okay.
And they had someone come out like it was the DraftKings advert going, who's going to win in the big title match? And I was like, I like this shonky DraftKings stuff. I don't know why.
Is this like, though, is it not like Manscaped and what all those podcast ads where it's like, it makes the podcast sound like big time. But if you just go to like manscaped.com/podcasters, literally anyone can sign up. I feel like that's all Court's doing here. Like,
that's all he's doing.
It's like the Don King thing. So while you were speaking then, I was just looking him up on Cameo because I was convinced. I saw this video. I was like, it literally it might as well have the Cameo logo in the corner. Like, Court slipped him $50 and he's just saying whatever he wants him to say. But saying that, I can't actually find them on Cameo. He's not there, and he's not in their list of top cameos.
How old is Don King now?
Oh, he must be in his 80s, something like this.
It's mad. Born in 1931. Okay,
wow.
So he is 91 at the minute. I don't know how people feel about wheeling a 91-year-old man out on pay-per-view.
91, thanks, Lou.
91 he is at the moment on there. What percentage of the earnings is he taking from there? I'm assuming 100% if it's Don King in there.
Michael Rappaport's $200, so I don't know if he'd be more or less than that. Like Andy Dick's $99, more or less than that. I'd say more than Andy Dick. You should be asking.
Maybe Julian Dix for a laugh.
But, William
Hunt,
MLW. $30, you know, could be more than that. Fred Stellar, everyone was around. I'm desperate to know. No, it's just, I mean, it's gotten them loads of press. Like, literally just Googling the words Don King has brought up like Forbes. I know that gobshite writes their stuff, but like other more like credible, like proper news outlets are covering this, like proper sports outlets, because it's like, oh, Don King to the Court Bauer making sure he, you know, makes use of that Rolodex he's got of contacts and getting the write-ups, getting the mainstream press. Will it actually mean anything? Probably not. Will it make anybody watch the confusing as fuck weekly TV that could be from August, could be from 2021, could be from 2017, could feature Kojima? You just don't know. But he does a lot with a little. Is the bit of credit I'll give.
It's wonderfully wacky. Like, and don't get me wrong, he's a problematic figure is Don King. There's a lot of stuff in his history. He was all about Matt
is he?
Vaughan
I didn't know
before.
that.
Oh, exactly.
Fully ignorant to that, so no one cancel me. I didn't know.
Who would have guessed? And like, here it is. I'm the man with the plan at Bomber. Alex Kane, bring that MLW World Heavyweight title back to me tonight. Bomber. That was all he did. All he had to say. That might be all we ever see of him in MLW. Fair fucks for trying it. I will admission on the internet, and it worked. That crowd popped massive when he won. He was massively over, and it felt like, okay, this is someone we really don't know anything about. Why not go with them? What they also announced was Matt Cardona's coming in, Kevin Blackwood's coming in as part of the draft. So I
mentioned that on the news update.
Yeah.
They got drafted in, didn't they?
They did.
That's how they do things. Yeah. Is Drederick Tatum on the list of draft signees? He not come up now?
He should be.
Get Max Hammersmith or Blaster Johnson or whatever to play him. I don't know. Maybe you can figure it out. But there you go. There's your MLW update. I was going to mention briefly SmackDown, but there isn't much to say. 40 minutes of Bloodline GCSE level drama opened the show. And I say that with a slight, but I did mostly enjoy it, just not for fucking 40 minutes. Turns out that the Roman Reigns is still the tribal chief, and he faked out Jey Uso and then beat him up. What I will say about that SmackDown, some like breaking news that came in through while we were recording, JP, 2.561 million viewers it did, and a 0.76 in the 1849, which is SmackDown's highest since June the 2nd, and the highest 1849 since Christmas Day 2020 when they had an NFL lead in. That's insane numbers. Matty said we didn't give it enough credit last time, mate. We said, did I not say on the weekend show? We can laugh at it. We can give Matty grief. Fucking draws though, doesn't it? We don't have the quarter hours, but like, as much as I might say that 40 minutes was way too fucking much, especially on a show, JP, where they found no room to include the red hot LA night, despite the UK show, but in Madison Square Garden, their other hotbed, didn't use the bloke. Like promotional malpractice at that point. But what you did get was 40 minutes of the Bloodline on the show. Yeah. And for the most part, it was quite compelling. They were fighting over the Bloodline necklace, though, JP, not over the belt for some reason. That seemed to matter a lot more. It's almost like that's the focus of the. Oh no, that all makes sense. It's the focus of the story. It just makes you wonder why the belt's even involved. But Matty's not.
Is this where someone's going to tell me the head of the table is really what's? I know that.
Seriously. That's absolutely, that was the verbiage.
Screw the belt.
That's what to do. No, totally. He threw the belt down at one point. I know it was part of the story, but like story capital letters. But I will say I continue to be right, as will Matty. But that's a massive. However way you cut it, like imagine the somersault you do if AEW pulled numbers like that.
Well, to quote Chris Morris on Brass Eye, it's a strong feelings, kidney, whichever way you slice it. Story or rubbish.
And there's just SmackDown analysis for the week. Anything else, JP? We covered it all. Been into a lot of places this week, haven't we?
Covered the world of wrestling tonight. We really have.
Oh, did you cover Mexico? Any AAA thoughts? Anyone to throw in?
Oh, Rocky Romero is in it. I don't know. Don't know what's good. CMLL apparently is good these days. They're the sellout show, but they sell out most of their shows, it seems to me. Seems to be good. But they have about 4 matches announced. And it's just like, but yeah, maybe at some point. Not this week.
Well, if you want the extended edition of this show, we're going to do a quick post show, probably a quick one as I'm flagging after my day out yesterday. But you'll get the pre-show as well, where me and Matty told more Wigan tales. You can get on the extended edition, as well as there's a lot of sports chat on the pre-show this week as well, if that floats your boat. Again, of all areas, so you can enjoy that too. And obviously, coming up, we got our weekend show on Friday. We'll do a full preview of the G1. Everything else going on this weekend. It's Slammiversary weekend, JP. So we'll be previewing that AAA on Saturday as well.
With Steve Macklin, replaced by Dina.
Yeah, put it in the daily update today.
I was going to say, you did it, but I'm good on Macklin. Good.
Yeah, but Trip, there you go. There's your Mexico reference. Kenny Omega's facing Vikingo, isn't he, this weekend at a Triple Mania? So we'll be previewing that. And then on top of that, if you haven't listened to it already, our top 5 video games / top 5 heels conversation is out there in bumper double edition form. And this weekend we'll be recording the Dave Bautista editor's decision. The U is involved, isn't it, JP? And we'll be covering final score and a to be determined, voted on by patrons second film as well. So look forward to all of that going on at GRAPPL Patreon.
That's pretty much it, isn't it? It's all absolutely perfect. Yeah. Can't argue with that. Patreon.com/GRAPPL. Loads of stuff coming up on there. Behind me, for the video viewers, you can see the stuff we've got coming up on there as well. So.
There you go. And yeah, obviously, if you're on the free feed, we'll be back with a spotlight next week. Subscribe to our YouTube. There'll be a little video clips of the other stuff that we're getting onto this week. But other than that, that's it for another week of Spotlight. We'll catch you all again next week. Patrons, we will see you in the week. And yeah, other than that, take care, folks.
Bye.
See ya.